Wala, wala. Oh, good morning. Morning, geeks. Hi. Wow, let me ask you a question. Who here was at the party last night? Who wasn't? Wow. So everybody who was not at the party last night, I want you to applaud the people who were at the party last night yet made it here this morning. Wow, you guys are amazing. So everybody else is probably still hangover. I'm just going to do a quick announcement on what's happening today, because today is a crazy day. We have several tracks, separate tracks lined up with all great speakers, and so I'm going to just run down everything so you can decide sort of ahead of time where you're going to go. All right, let's just go through it. So the first, this morning we have the keynote by Maria Ressa from Rappler. Let's go down. My operator, thank you so much. And then we have Founders Journeys is our first panel. The road less traveled. Let's go down. This is happening here. Then we have a short networking break. And then we have the next panel by Ravi Agarwal. Hold on. Can you go back? I just want to. Philippines, the future global hub for tech-enabled social enterprises. So that's a question they want to find solutions for. Let's go down. And then we had the next panel. We dare you to use bitcoins by Ron Hos. Moderated by Hos from coins.ph. Let's go. And then Rise Up from Disasters, Stop Tech to the Rescue. This is around 12-ish. We're having a late lunch today. We have a break those in the morning. And then we have short fire pitches. Now, if you want to pitch quickly, like 1 minute, we're giving 1 minute, please tweet, tag us, like mention us on Twitter about what your startup is in your short, like 140 character pitch. And then we'll select from them, like we'll have 10 featured, 10 minutes for everybody. And then we'll have breakout sessions. So let's go down. Let's go back up, sir. All the way up. Because we need to click the button. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. There. Oops, go back down. Breakout sessions. Click that one. It says breakout sessions over there. So this is available on the website. You can also check it later. Go. Okay, let's go down. So track A. This is special interest track. It's happening in like a few minutes. We're actually delayed a little bit. Bitcoin 101 by Ron Hos. I heard he's giving bitcoins away so that you can teach you how to also use bitcoins. Next up will be, James Florentino is also there by bitcoins.ph. And then there's also music plus design plus events by Kaloy Uipanko. This is this morning. It will be happening simultaneously with this one. And then A Foreigner Tiptoes Around the Vietnam Market. That's by Gwen. But I think we moved you to 11 because you have a panel that ends at 10:30. So yeah. And so yeah, rushing around and stuff. Then we have Andreas Nevera. Maybe he will be moved up to 10:30. We'll see if he makes it. World's Biggest Internet Companies, World Startup Report. And finally, Jay Fajardo, Promoting Tinkering and the Maker Culture from Proud Cloud / Launch Garage. afternoon sessions. So the special interest track, the first one we have is Tempting Top Talent to Tech. That's kind of a tongue twister, no? Tempting Top Talent to Tech by Peyton Yao and Tim from Caliber. Next, Software Development in Healthcare is Broken by Harm of Care Sharing. And then Ask Me Anything by Hugh Mason from JFDI.
Hey, don't forget the growth secrets from Dropbox, Instagram, and Pinterest.
Sorry, I missed that. Thank you for pointing that out.
You're welcome.
From Peter from Amazon Web Services.
And then my personal favorite, Jollibee Chicken Sad, an IT management case study by none other than Canon Legaspi.
From Orange and Bronze Labs.
Chicken Sad.
I got chicken today.
Did you? At
Yep.
Jollibee?
Yep.
They had stock?
Drive-through, yep.
Seriously?
Spicy.
All right.
Track B. This is happening at Monte Carlo. Monte Carlo 1, 2, and 3, or
Yes.
1, 2, and 3. We'll see.
It's one of these. I'm not sure which one.
So the first one is Business and Corporate Entrepreneurship, Hiring and Retaining Talent by Arup from Blast
by
Asia.
Andreas.
No, he's the moderator.
Okay. Well, actually, Arup and I were just talking. And he's going to change it up a little.
Really?
He's going to talk about drones.
Oh.
And that kind of cool technology.
That's pretty far off from hiring and retaining talent.
I know.
All right.
He felt it's a better fit for the crowd.
Sure.
I said yes.
Okay. So drones for Arup. And then how to scale your startup from Mohan from E27.
Oh, that sounds interesting.
Filipino Founder's Journey to Silicon Valley by Eric Su. So Eric Su actually went to Silicon Valley through the On3 program.
That's great.
And he's going to talk about it.
At 3:30, we have Jadip Agrawal, who's talking about building a world-class outsourcing companies in the Philippines. So he's the managing director of NCR, has quite a lot of experience to share with you guys. And then at 4 p.m.,
yeah, this one. This is interesting for those who are like dabbling into currently employees but want to dab to entrepreneurship. So from employee to entrepreneur, strategies for transitioning. You know, it's always asking, how do I start my startup while working?
Awesome.
Well, you can talk to Clarissa.
So we have then our gaming and design. This is track C. It's in Monte Carlo 2. The first one, it is at 2 p.m. Design with Mark Deutsch. He's from Happy Garaje, and of course he's the Geeks on the Beach creative lead.
So he made this actually.
Yes,
So
he did.
Yep. And then we have Web UX and Technology Trends by Thomas Temasis. And this is interesting. Our wild experience with Kickstarter.com. That's kind of curious.
Yeah.
Makes me mysterious, huh?
I'm intrigued.
By Sharon Balani, Quickfire Games.
Then at 3:30 we have gaming from Pugo Games and Cam Cabral from the same company. They're going to be talking about the gaming industry in general.
Pugo is this like a inspired by Flappy Bird.
That's right.
But adapted to the Philippine market.
Speaking of Flappy Birds, have you downloaded?
They're not gonna focus.
It's not out yet. I mean,
It's not. Yeah.
news.
Okay. Cruz will be facilitated. Will be Hacker to Founder by Paul Pajo of Smart DevNet.
That's awesome. The second talk, Philippine software engineering scene part CTO of ProudCloud.
Part 1 was actually at Goa last year.
That's right. It was awesome.
So he might do like that talk.
Correct. At 3:30, Rico Santa Cruz is following up with how hard some journey that he's gone through. So I think with you guys.
And finally, we have Priority Intruders. I hope I got that right, from Salarium. Those are our tracks. And then after everything, we'll shortly recap here. And then we'll take with using the drone, right? All right. So that would be really cool. So finally, we can have a group picture to prove that the geeks have been to the beach.
Okay, and just one other kind of general reminder. Right outside this door, you will see an art showcase, local artists, Philippine artists. Go there, check out what they have.
It's for sale, I think.
It's all for sale. Great prices. There's also a lot of startups out there who have booths. You can feel free to drop by, talk with them, check out what they're doing, see their websites. In addition to that, don't forget, we have this whole selfie for charity promo going. So we're gonna put some donation baskets out at the Game of Thrones charity. So take a selfie there. Take a selfie with the selfie statue in the lobby to Bangon Bohol Fund that's going to help Bohol recover after the earthquake last year. So just be reminded, be generous. Let's help them.
All right. Any questions? I'll take two. 1-0. Okay, there's none. Okay, so now we'll proceed with our talks. So there will be a session here, and then we will grab with Bitcoin. So we'll be giving a 2-minute break right after this.
Yes.
And those who are interested to go to the Bitcoins, they're giving away Bitcoins. The room is small. Let's go now.
And those who are staying, you have an awesome speaker coming up.
Yep.
Maria Ressa from Rappler is on deck. So clearly forgot to set their alarm. So wake them up and get. All right, welcome back. Well, we're gonna get it started. Of Maria Ressa, and she's gonna be talking with us today about the future of media today. So let's put our hands together and give her a warning.
Part of what was so exciting listening to everyone yesterday, even though 6 hours, is that even though we were stuck at the airport for 6 hours, the people on the plane had our own little mini breakout session. So it wasn't so bad. And since so along with 4 of the others, it was actually really good. They gave us a prize. It is talk about energy to take off. And I think that's what we can get from here. So help you never do as a presenter, which is to throw too many words at your in the morning after they were two. There are 2 logos. Rappler is about to, and I want to tell you about that now. This is the slide I told you you should never do, but I figured you're geeks, so I can be geeky, which is really this. So you want to know how media developed? There are many different histories of media, but for me, what I'm interested in is media and technology. And if you look back, then we have a sense of how we're going to move forward. And you'll have a sense of where Rappler stands in that. Began in the 70s. Media and technology have been intertwined. It's just at the beginning, technology wasn't business models. And these, if you're 20 something, you do these things because they don't exist anymore. This is when we had to write, like Facebook. It sounds like a unique idea, doesn't it? But there was actually a site called 6degrees.com, exactly like Facebook, except it was launched at the time when it was still dial-up. So it couldn't. 6degrees.com died, and Facebook survived. So just because it doesn't work now doesn't mean it cannot work. You've just got to make sure you've got the right conditions. Then the internet. The internet was actually a Defense Department, U.S. Defense Department invention, right? It was in 1988, but Tim Berners-Lee created the World Wide Web the way we know it today, and not so long ago, 1991. 1993, this guy named Mark Andreessen, and he's interesting because just a week ago, Andreessen Horowitz, his company, invested $50 million in BuzzFeed, which began in 2006 and now wants to move into journalism. BuzzFeed, that started as a viral laboratory, more of a marketer's delight, right, is now going to be a global news network at a valuation of $850 million. $850 million. Remember the Washington Post when Jeff Bezos bought into it 2 years ago? $250 million. So you see how things have shifted. Mark Andreessen, in 1993, he launched the browser wars. Microsoft followed with Internet Explorer, huge then, but then in 19 huge became free. And it was actually this. Reuters gives its content to Yahoo for free. For free. Free, and that changed news to be free. That sets the tone. Then in the mid-90s, bloggers. And bloggers changed everything about traditional news, even though you wouldn't know that. You wouldn't expect it. But again, when I was looking at, if you were following the Iraq War, you weren't just reading New York Times, CNN, or BBC. You were also reading the one Iraqi blogger who made you feel like you were there and told us what it was really like. So it's this combination, and that push and pull changes everything. The aggregator was the last one, which I didn't talk about, Huffington Post, right? So let me talk about, my next slide is nothing. This is my 30th year as a journalist, so I'm older than I look, or you're thinking, you're exactly the age that you look. But I spent 30 years as a traditional television journalist, 20 years with CNN, 6 years with ABS, right? And I learned certain things. But what I learned was that traditional news groups need to change dramatically, and they're not ready. The last year I was with a large network in the Philippines, I would say 90% of my time was spent trying to implement things that the public didn't see, because I was trying to push it through our own internal network. So this is your advantage as a startup. You start with nothing. You have no legacy issues. All of a sudden, it was liberating. And this was how Rappler started 2.5 years ago. Nothing. There was nothing there. So what's the next thing you need? You need people. and you've got to choose the right people. So there were 4 or 5 of us that are above 40. No one from media, don't write this, but my core team from ABS, they wanted to experiment. So the head of ANC, the head of ABS, CBNnews.com, they all came to Rappler, and that helped. But it wasn't us oldies. They hate it when I call them oldies, but it wasn't the older folks who made a difference. It was people like this, a 20-something who I met on Twitter. This is one of our reporters. She's 20-something, Natasha Gutierrez. We met on Twitter. I had no idea who she is, but her Twitter feed made sense. She was smart, and she wanted to experiment. And what you're seeing there is our first change. So what did we want to do in Rappler? We wanted to take traditional media, change it, take what technology has to offer and create something new. And what does it begin with video? Well, it begins with gear like this. Something we cobbled together. You make it up, and it's okay to make it up. That's an iPhone. We put a ring case around it that we asked someone to build for us, and then you put a lens. You hook it up to a professional audio so you can have great audio, and she carries lights so that it's not dark and it doesn't look grainy. And in her other hand, you'll see she's got a tripod. So we started with 12 people, one little space, and we made it like this, right? One of the things that I saw wrong in newsrooms was that part of the politics begins because blow it open, let everyone hear what everyone is working on, feed off the energy that everyone has. So we did our studio in the middle of this open space, and every time somebody was doing an interview, everyone just stayed quiet. It sounds crazy if you're traditional television, but it works. And here's the part I like best. This is Ai Makaraig. I don't know why I don't have boy. We do have boy reporters, promise. But the reason I like this one is if you take a look, the photo was shot by Ces Drilon, a good friend of mine from ABS. And the 2 guys you see all the way to your right are 2 of our 2 cameramen from ABS. You see, pinagtatawanan nila si Ai. They're laughing at our reporter, Ai, who was an ANC producer. She is talking to her iPhone on a tripod by herself. And for traditional cameramen, they thought that was really funny until they realized she got it posted faster than they did. So breaking news, we tend to be first. We did things like this. Creativity comes out of necessity when you're a startup, right? So what you see is, let me start like this. Most TV news groups, all TV stations, have to buy a satellite broadcasting van. I know from experience, the cheapest you will find is $800,000 to $1 million. And if you buy in bulk, which is one of the things I did, if you buy 6 or 7 of them, maybe you can lower it to $700,000. For start against that, we built our own for $100,000. That is an IP satellite van, meaning it can mobile studio as a mobile live shot. It's got its own generator, and you can drive it anywhere in the Philippines. It provides that. And in places like Tacloban, where outside the city, time it gave broadband speed over this area. This is Rappler today. We're television. No, we're not. I gotta start video on the great fun of it all, right? And then make them be really good friends, as in twins with your brother. That's what needed to happen. And it was great fun. One of our partners, and another thing I'll tell you about. But support ABS-CBN News. We're the site behind ABS-CBN. Shocking, watch it every day. It's a group of people is better than they had expected. So long as they continue, right? So show you what is Rappler. What is the processes that are the same, but what we need to inject and unlisted in. Third is the crowd. You guys, Rappler wouldn't do so well if you weren't there because you are actually 20% of Rappler's content comes from you. Tina wrote a piece that you can see, and 20%. That's huge, right? That's so we move from the linear production model. You are now telling us and actually reaching the same audience. So, but you can also harness the wisdom of the crowds in a different way using these. And you guys have seen me talk about this. This is the same model, whether it's for journalism, for advertising, or for civic engagement. And those are the three things we do. And this whole thing is content creation. First, you get big data and you funnel that right back into the mix, right? Mood meter moods, because how people make decisions in their lives is not based on what they think. That's why my first slide, it is based on how you feel. And we've been taught for so long to stifle how we feel. How you feel determines how you act. And here's the hard part. In November 2012, Gallup released that Filipinos are the most emotional people in the world. Singaporeans are the least. So we use moods. Click how you feel. When you vote, that vote is aggregated by the mood navigator that's in the middle of the front page. That's this up on top. So the crowdsourced vote up top, and it's a navigation point also for Rappler. And then you take all those votes and you can show the month in moods, you can show the year in moods. We only have 2.5 years of data, but you can certainly see trends. And here's the month of May in moods, and it's interesting because May elections, 77% happy. May 13th, if you look at the bottom, was election day, and people were really happy leading up to election day, but on May 13th at 8:30 in the evening, the angry votes spiked. And they spiked because of the slow results from the PCOS machines, right? You go down around the 23rd, 24th, that's the day when the senators, the winners were announced. And then go further, around the 29th and 30th, you see a big spike of red. That has nothing to do with politics. That is Vice Ganda cracking the rape joke about Jessica Soho. That's that tail end. So you see Filipinos react, right? We react. I want to quickly show you there's the big data part. And there's no bigger data than social media, what we've been pushing up. And when I end the presentation, I want to show you your own tweets, hashtag GoAb, and the communities you've built based on your tweets. But in this one, we're putting this up there. That is intelligence for someone. And you can look at it like this. This is actually what made me decide to set up Rappler as early as we did, because I was writing a book. I was trying to trace how terrorism spread. And by doing that, when we mapped this in 2011, I was like, holy cow, it is time to do this, because the time, I thought, fingers crossed, is right. These are Twitter maps. If you see me talk, I show them to you all the time. But what are they? They don't map surveys. They map human behavior, right? So this is March in Japan, hashtag Japan, March of 2011. The earthquake and the Fukushima reactor, the Japanese behave the same way Filipinos behave in crisis. We form clumps, hubs around people, sources who give information, and most of the time they're news groups and government. The second, 6 months before the last US presidential elections, that's millions of Americans, and they show you how divided Americans were between Mitt Romney and Barack Obama, right? Interesting here. This, hashtag Egypt 2011, this is what a revolution looks like. In 2011, we called it the Arab Spring. Now we might be calling it the Arab Winter. But this is a revolution. Hashtag Syria, this is what a civil war looks like between President Bashar al-Assad and the rebels before ISIS. So again, that's connected. We can talk more about that. We did many more after this, but let's bring it to the Philippines. About a year ago, hashtag Million People March. Internet-driven, the very first time, peer-to-peer networks pushed people out on the street. It's the first internet-driven protest, I would say. And what's interesting there is when you walk around in Luneta Park, when you walked around on that day, it was kind of boring. Because it was peer-to-peer driven, so there was no leader. It was pretty disorganized, and everyone was doing their own thing. It looked like this. It like social contagion again, like a disease spreading. It hits a tipping point. Well, the tipping point, this point, was at 11 a.m. and the densest crowd was at 1 p.m. on the same day. So you can see it flow. You can see more of this later on. And this is what it looks like when you map it. A mess. That is what we are like on the internet, on our networks, unless we structure the narrative. So what's interesting to me now as we move forward, there's another protest. I want to see if the narrative, structuring the narrative, that's what we try to do as a news group, if the narrative has organized this. And if you look at this, this is exactly what the Egypt map looked like 2 years before the revolution. Well, the Arab Spring. So here's the basic idea for both Rappler and Reach. What you see up top is only the tip of the iceberg, literally. The stories, the metrics. Emotions drive, because this is what will drive you. So you know the old saying, smile and the world smiles with you. If I smile directly at you, like I just did with him, you can't help it, you smile back. And then he passes it on. It's social contagion, or in a more scientific way, you can say there's a 3 degrees of influence rule. And I'll tell you more about that. But that's where emotion spreads. That's why you, the person next to you. But then beyond that, the networks. If you can see our family and friends, then this is where I want to go. You hopefully can influence behavior. Why? I've been a journalist for 30 years. I was here in Manila for a lot of that time, and I am tired of doing the same stories over and over without any ending. Technology now allows journalists to help, and this is how we do it. So I told you about the 3 degrees of influence rule, and it looks like this. If I am, let's take the emotion of loneliness, because those are the statistics I remember. If I'm feeling lonely, my friend has a 54% chance of feeling lonely. My friend's friend, the second degree, has a 25% chance of feeling lonely because I do, and my friend's friend's friend, the third degree, has a 15% chance of feeling lonely because I do. The reason I'm showing this to you here is because this is your first degree, here's your second, and the third degree is out here, right? So if you're trying to spread something, spread a virus, that's the negative part, spread an emotion or spread an idea, I don't want to just talk to the echo chamber, my friends and family. I want to hit my second or third degree, right? That kind of is an interesting thing. I want to show you very quickly what Geeks on a Beach looks like when we place it in the network. Let me tell you about this is reach. And what we did is we took what we used to do for counterterrorism. My latest book is called From Bin Laden to Facebook. All the ideas are there. It's in chapter 5 because it shows you how things really spread. But basically, what we do is this. You can actually evaluate their performance on social media, influencers and markets, and measure the effects. Actionable intelligence for real world impact. And here's the part that I like, which scares some of the marketers we talk to. Reach uses classic counterterrorism tactics for digital engagement and marketing with the goal of changing behavior in the real world. Like Inception, our dream world is the social media world. What does it look like? Well, this is the fun part. Let me find my cursor. Let's go to the community. Let's map. Go up. Come. Waiting. Yay. Then let's map. So what it does is it will take the first 500 tweets and just show us community. It'll take, depending on how fast our internet speed is, it will show you the map. When you see the map, then you can decide who your influencers are. And if you know you want to spread the message further, how are you going to do that? Okay, Geeks on a Beach is the one that is the most powerful on this, and that makes sense because it's Geeks on a Beach has been tweeting the what we've been doing since yesterday. Let's look at who else looks interesting, right? So we're clustered around Geeks on a Beach. These are outliers, which means what the heck? What are they doing? Let's see who they are. So it takes a little bit to render. Let's look at the outliers. I want to see if I can find one of you guys here. This is a little bit of an outlier, which means you're an outlier to Geeks on the Beach. Kicks Panganiban, and then you can also come in. Who else? This is interesting. You can play with this. I'll show you. I mean, it's a demo tool we use, but what it does is it takes the Twitter stream and gives it to you. So you like, then you can go ahead and act. Choose which ones you're going to, what tactics you're going to use. Communities are important. Okay. That'll be on the beach. You guys are really cool about this. So we will probably make this a public tool 2 weeks, as soon as we finish building the other parts of it. The last thing I want to show you is something we're working on with our friendly neighborhood host, Dave. No, but this is this. Disaster management. How can we take the power of the crowd? I have 5 minutes, and I will do the power of the crowd to actually help government do something it hasn't been able to do. We have an average of 20 typhoons every year. We have no top-down workflow that's standardized. and yet something to do. So what we did, and it's taken us a year to build this, is we built a platform called Project Agos, and that is with units. We've spent 8 months getting these maps that are there but are not available to you publicly. And now we've partnered with the first responders, the PNP, the AFP, nearly 2,000 LGUs. This is move people, not journalists, they're civic activists. Right? So this is Haiyan, Yolanda. This is what it looked like on the ground. This a after that this hit, right? It looks scary from outer space. Prepare, respond, recover. And you just 8 months to get these hazard maps, and we don't have them all there yet. But if you click here, it tells you what you can do, best practices. The respond part is where technology kicks in. We're trying to build something that is real-time reporting and real-time responses from authorities. We've already done several iterations of it. It works. Glenda is the last one where it worked very well. It didn't work well during Yolanda because telcos died. Information is the first critical thing in a disaster, right? No fault of the telcos, it is the storm, right? So in response, the thing that we're doing is actually something called artificial intelligence for disaster response. What does that mean? It means that volunteers are great. They can work for 4 hours, but people get tired. What if you can actually take what the volunteers have done and teach an algorithm how to make those selections? It's called a machine learning classifier. And when you do that, you have Project Agos. We're working with the Qatar Research QRCI, and they were basically taking coding that they've done and then we're putting it into the real world as a laboratory test. It is the first time globally that it's working, and part of it is because government is open to it. We've already partnered with DILG, CCC, OCD. I can give you every single acronym. We've done that. And the tech community, very, very, very great tech community, and you, right? So here's the stuff we did during Yolanda. Just taking the Twitter feed, we did a crisis tracker because people wanted to know news about their area, and real time on Twitter, if you click on Giwan, you will get every single tweet on the right side that mentions Giwan or is geotagged to Giwan. We worked with OCHA, the UN OCHA, and a guy named Patrick Meyer. He worked on Ushahidi, but he built the code for AIDR, Artificial Intelligence for Disaster Response. So we helped categorize and map tweets so that when we fall asleep in the Philippines, someone in Qatar picks it up, someone in London picks it up, and someone in New York picks it up around the clock. This is rescue mapping. I gotta wrap up and I don't want to take time from someone else. So I will very quickly go through these and just end with these two. This is a collaboration with Google and Facebook. After the storm hit, Google and Facebook sent their engineers to Manila. And what we tried to do is to consolidate everything. We had somebody on the ground in Tacloban who started posting photos, and then was posted on Google's Person Finder, and automatically Facebook's facial, so that if you knew someone who knew and video, the video was shot by a citizen journalist, not a professional. That's why you embrace. And this is in Dumaguete. You can see it. And the idea there is that people report through 3 ways on Agos, on this message, and on social media, Twitter, and by standing on their roof. Hashtag Rescue PH was actually created. You'll hear from Tonyo Cruz later on. They took it. They said, let's all use the same hashtag. We rode on top of it to try to do something that enables the crowd to help. I'll end with this. The crowd is an incredible game changer. It is not just the technology, it is how people use the technology. Our institutions are weak, they need help. And part of the reason we did this, we make no money from this, but that's okay because we'll make money from other things. And I think that's part of what I love the spirit of startups, right? We believe it's possible to do good. So our partners do good with us. They actually help us because they know we're a startup, right? Um, we're doing the Social Good Summit. We're going to roll it out. We're starting to do workshops with local government units, with citizens, with students, with bloggers. Please, this is September 16th in Manila. We're working with the Global Center for Journalism and Democracy. They're flying folks in because we couldn't afford it. But what we are doing is we are hosting them in true Philippine fashion. This is the third year we're doing the Social Good Summit, 4 days, and we're not keeping it in Manila. We didn't have the money, but it happened. We're bringing it to Tacloban. And in Tacloban, we hope Eastern Visayas kicks in as well. In Tacloban, we will look at what we did, how we can learn from it, what are the things we can do in the future. Because, guys, it isn't going to stop. It's only going to get worse. The only thing we can do is to prepare. Thanks.
Wow. Thank you, Maria. That was great. I think it was very inspiring. As she alluded to, we're working with them on Project Agos, and yeah, it's a great topic, and I look forward to discussing that more with Tonyo later this afternoon. I'm going to transition quickly into our next panel, and let me grab this schedule because I don't know where mine is. So the next panel is the Founder's Journey, A Road Less Traveled. And I would like to call on a good friend and longtime supporter, and actually maybe one of the original supporters of getting Tina back in the Philippines, Christina Laskowski, to come on down. Let's give her a round of applause. So she's from Stack in Silicon Valley, and she's just been encouraging startup movements all over the world. And thank you, Christina. I'll let you introduce your next panelists.
Thank you. Great to be here. And I have to tell you, 4 years ago, when the country, Philams, had thought about a startup community happen, that there wasn't anything here. And folks like Tina, myself, and many of you here in the room didn't believe in that. We really felt that there was something here. We saw it, and 4 years later, we've got the second Geeks on a Beach. So I think it's incredible, and I think it's great, and I'm happy to be. Our next panel is called The Founder's Journey. We have a little bit of a different twist to this panel. We initially thought we would talk about women in tech, but I think given the region and given some of the differences that I've observed here and in Silicon Valley, we are gonna set it up a little bit differently and highlight women leaders and women founders. Get back mobile browser with over 80 million installs worldwide. She also founded Right Ventures, seed stage investment firm focusing on mobile and consumer internet. Investments include Flesky, Mighty Text, Pack, Bounce.io. She is also an advisor to Strikingly. Before all the startup world, she worked with companies like AT&T Wireless, Oracle, Siebel, Autodesk, Cisco, Telstra, and hung up the foundation for the SMB internet market. and SF Entrepreneur, San Francisco's 37 meetup. Welcome. Next on our panel is Gwendolyn Regina Tan, based in Singapore. Gwen is an entrepreneur, investor, and community leader focused on technology startups in Asia, where she now continues to track innovation. Is also a coordinator graduate. She sits on the advisory boards of some associations, was a mentor at Polish tech startup incubator Gamma Rebels, is the Singapore curator for U.S. headquartered startup digest, when Box network of innovators, blogger, policy lobbyer, ambassador, community leader, business leader, and dubbed as the mother of e-commerce law in the Philippines. Janet has been campaigning for the application model integration, CMMI, in the Philippines since 2002. This would ensure a higher quality software development, make the effective market. Janet also founded the Philippine Internet Commerce Society law, which was eventually passed in 2000, making it easier for companies in the Philippines to do online businesses globally. Welcome, Janet. I wanted some stats and women leaders to share their experiences in their companies, sharing their stories about mentors along the way, any obstacles that they faced as professionals, but through a woman's lens, I think is what we'd like to hear today. So some of the statistics, Tech Republic, 7% of venture capital funding, only 7%, go to women in the U.S. This is for business school. The range of investing VCs that are women range between 4%. Interest survey reflected that startups often, this is according to Dow Jones, 1997 to 2011, and their definition of success were companies that either went public or were acquired. And the share of female executives in those companies were 7.1%. I guess we have here a representation of those women, of a few women who would be considered contributing to those success stories. So we'd love to hear from our panelists, what inspired you to start your own, your own ventures, and what were your experiences along the way when you started it? But what served as a catalyst? What inspired you, and if there were any mentors that you had along the way?
I'll start. Sure. Everyone's looking this way. So thank you again for having me. Thank you, Christina, for hosting this. So my journey is a little bit different. So so thanks again for kind of reading out my bio. It was very weird hearing entire bio like read out in public. So what I sold to Tech in Asia, my current company, was a Southeast Asian focused tech blog. So how that started was actually 9 years ago now, and it was a hobby. It was something I started just because I saw a need in the market. So this was back in 2005. I loved writing, I loved tech. I taught myself coding when I was 12, but I'm not technical now. So I love the fusion of everything. So I saw a gap in the market. I thought that okay, internet is the place to be. As young startups, this is where you need to be because you want to be visible to potential customers and investors. So I just started writing about it. I got a very ugly blogger.com template, just started writing for fun and kept it going. So that was an accidental like company, so to speak. So along the way, I actually found it a fun, and that was interesting in itself because that's a startup as well. It was my experience, in a sense, my second startup. So how that happened was 1 year after I started the blog, the Singapore government came to us. I'm based in Singapore, from Singapore. They came to us and they were like, okay, we've got $500 million for the internet sector for the next 5 years. And hey, you guys are super in touch with what's happening on the ground, covering startups, entrepreneurs, developers. You guys would know who would be the best people to invest in. So I was like, I'm 21 years old. I know nothing. I know shit about this. I'm not the best person. So long story short, I found experienced entrepreneur the fun. I was the most junior, and yeah, so we invested in 35 companies. Actually, now 3 exits to date. Most have died. 4 are still alive. So yeah, so after that, then I decided, okay, let me focus on the blog. It was called SG Entrepreneurs to try to make it sustainable. So I went full time on that for 2 years, and then I sold it. So it's a bit of a weird journey. I didn't start SGE with the goal of being like a big company, right? Yeah. So that's my, I guess, summary of that journey. So yeah, I've been with Tech in Asia for 1 year, and it's been great. Um, the acquisition, coffees and whatever took fairly quickly, maybe 1 to 2 months, all in. So during the acquisition process, I told my current CEO that, hey, I think our blog and your blog, Tech in Asia, would fit really well together. 1 + 1 = 3, because in terms of geographical coverage, um, and it's a very good fit. But at the same time, the team is really important to me. So I said to Willis, can I meet your top people again, especially the people I'll be working with, just to have a few more coffees to see whether we can, click, so to speak. And I had a good feeling, and so we agreed on a deal, and then the acquisition happened. So yeah, so that's been great. I was way happier than I thought. The acquisition panned out way better than I thought, and yeah, so that was it. But actually, that was the second time we talked about acquisition. We had a brief discussion the year before, but nothing came out of that. Yeah.
In the earlier discussion, did you bring it to the table, or did they bring it to the table? Or was it a meeting of the minds?
They suggested it. Yeah. So that's my journey.
So a hobby turned into something,
Yeah.
into a business.
Yeah. So
with
I
a
do
real
want to
need.
start
Yeah,
something
addressing a need.
else. I do want to start something else. Good.
Is that cool if I go? Okay. All right. Inspiration and when sort of my own story. Actually, the first business that I ever was when I was maybe 14, and really about I reflect is everything that I do actually is basically with people that I really enjoy hanging out with. And I remember there's like 4 of us. I went to all girls school, and one of our best friend, he's like the number one, like he's like 9. I went to school in Hong Kong, like all A's. So we were hanging out, and we thought, you know what? This girl, her name is Winnie, have the best homework ever, and we decided, you know what? We're gonna copy her homework and then sell it for $1. And then little that we knew, within like a couple of weeks, we made like probably like $100 Hong Kong. So it's not really that much money. But I thought, wow, this is so fun. I can actually make money just hang out with my friends. So that was sort of the inspirations. And now it sort of reflect a very, very different, from Gwen. I sort of follow, I don't know about you guys, but my parents, do you actually have a real job? Like, what do you actually do? So when I first graduated from college, I was a developer, actually, not a very good one, but I did about a couple years of, actually, I even did Y2K also, which is really dated me. But for about 2-3 years, I was actually developing client server, working on Oracle and Power Builder and all that. So I did 10 years, mostly enterprise software. Spent 6 years with Siebel, and then Oracle bought Siebel. I was with Oracle, and then after Oracle, I went to Autodesk. So I did 10 years, mostly enterprise software. And then after that, I thought life is short. You've got to do something you're passionate about. I was born out of my mind, and at the time, I really didn't know what I wanted to start. The only thing that I knew is I didn't want to do tech. But at the same time, I didn't want to tell my mother that I quit my corporate job and wanted to start my own thing. And so for 2 years after I quit my corporate job and started BizTech at the time, my mother actually had no idea that I actually quit my corporate job and speaking in Hong Kong somewhere. So I have to tell her that, oh, I actually started this thing. And she goes, thank God, I thought you were either on drug or you were pregnant. And I said, well, neither of these. I started this thing. And which leads to dolphin. So a very, very good friend of mine was a developer from Microsoft. So at the time, he actually started Dolphin, and he was showing me that, hey, check this out, with a gigantic, very ugly Android phone. And I thought, and he showed me, oh, this is the browser I built called Dolphin. So Yongzhi, he's the founder, he's very, very geeky, but I appreciate developers. I just love like seeing cool things. This is nice and all, but let me introduce you to other people. He's very, very Chinese. Let me introduce all the Chinese people to Cisco, and you guys can go and partner friends. And after 6 months of him like showing me all these dolphin stuff, and that's how I decided to join. And for us, it's been a very, very crazy journey, because when I first joined, it was around, I wish I can take all the credit, but there's no marketing and whatnot. I run all the business side of things. It was already 1 million install within 6 months. We didn't do anything, just improving the product. And after I joined, when we are talking about like women and all that, I basically look at this thing. I said, the logo is horribly too much alike Firefox. I'm like, there's no way we're gonna do this. So I basically changed everything that you see today, including the color, so basically use my women touch, if you would say, and basically change completely how Dolphin look today. And then we used 99 Design and did a contest. It's very, very grassroots. But we just, the right timing, we were also really lucky, and also just, till today, we have about 200 emails per day that we get from our user telling us what to change, what to fix. And then we hit 100 million install earlier this year. Number one in Asia, particularly China and Japan. And then actually 4 weeks ago, we got acquired by a Chinese gaming company. So that's been definitely a very interesting ride. Many other stories to tell, but I think we should go to our third panelist, the first story.
First and foremost, congratulations, Geeks on the Beach. And so, my name is Jana Tora. My own website back in 1999. It's called digitalfilipino.com. It's an e-sign, which is my story. It's all about the road less traveled, and more because you try to bootstrap everything. The negatives 2 years later because of the dot-com crash that happened in year 2000 and 2001. But I think what I embraced was the idea with the blue ocean strategy at that time. So I kept looking for new ideas. So I was embracing that concept that if you have an online business, you should look for opportunities, income, short-term relationship. When I was looking available, if most of your very limited repeat short-term of sales. So that's why I focus more on services. I think I tried publishing research reports on my own, and then a community, which is a membership type. And that's where I got my long-term relationship type of income. I saw some of our members who are here today, so I put up a digital Filipino club where people join and they pay a yearly membership, and after 5 years they are honorary members. They're free for life. So what I do for them is I render training, I do consulting, I organize 2 events a year, which is an e-commerce entrepreneur summit and a digital influencers marketing summit. That's where I give them opportunities to get exposure as part of their membership, and there are people that can send them to training for free. Later, I found myself in support of the startup movement. I put up 2 boot camp sites that offers training for free. I tried putting up a Startup 100 project 2 years ago after participating in the International Visitors Leadership Program of the U.S. But then at that time, as soon as I got back here, the startup scene again is very much alive, and there's so many funding like from Idea Space, among others. And then I found myself in a situation where I train people, teach them how to do business models, among others, and they ended up pitching to the other organizations. So I think I've learned to accept my role as more of an enabler, training people, and those who would like to become enablers themselves. No, so that's what I've noticed. And I think the kind of audience that I tend to attract are those who are maybe 10 steps or 10 stages before they can think of attending events like this. Maybe they are still learning, they're still exploring, and then maybe after a few years they will, yeah, maybe this is something that they can do. And then later on, I realized also that, of course, the startup scene is there, but you also have the traditional brick and mortar businesses who would like to embrace online. Most of the advertising money would usually go to Google or to Facebook. Although bloggers were tapped from time to time, I realized that when you have a booming industry like real estate, cars, loans, among others, you can't just rely on traditional advertising that you see on the internet. So I'm now focused also on building an online lead generation network, but this time empowering bloggers as lead generators. So instead of them just like I'm sure Dave is familiar, like pay to post, review me, where bloggers sign up and they get paid. But in this case, you empower each blogger as a lead generator. But instead of just paying them like an affiliate, where you pay them per fee, per conversion, you ramp them up on a competition style, and who converts the highest will get the highest part of the pot, no? But last year, I finally decided to form my first startup. So I have this company called iMetrics Asia Pacific Corporation with Dr. Nick Fontanilla and with Dr. Donald Lim. We're producing the Purchasing Managers Index that studies the manufacturing, retail, and services sector on the B2B transactions level. And then on top of it, we're doing the e-commerce intensity index survey. That's where we try to gauge of all the transactions, how many of them are being done on e-commerce and how much payments are being done through e-commerce. This last month, we started implementing already the beta for ASEAN. So most likely next year, we're going to open an office in Singapore because we're going to roll out the PMI and the e-commerce intensity index on a regional level, implementing it in 10 countries so that we can produce a monthly e-commerce report on how e-commerce penetration is happening. And I think by next year, it seems I'm going to start pitching next year for that project.
Oh, that's great. That's wonderful. Janet, you survived and thrived, obviously, right? And I'm sure there were some obstacles. Were there any mentors or support groups? I mean, we just had a breakfast earlier where we're talking about support, and Stephen and Paul were up front yesterday on a panel talking about some of the challenges with running a startup. But have there been any mentors or people that you and everyone on the panel that you've looked up to as you've helped move your company forward?
I think that's my unfortunate circumstance because I was an early player. When I was doing my projects, like for instance, trying to put up a membership site, at that time I was only looking at Academy as a framework, but I didn't really like the model too much. So I had to implement it my way. I was also, when we were doing like this one, the online lead generation network, I cannot find any model that can do what I want to do. So usually you ended up doing it first, and then you just get maybe inspiration left and right. So more of the inspiration that I got were more on the on the process of re-engineering. I mean, but reading more about it rather than getting a direct support. And at the same time, at that time, it was also quite political because there were very few women who are, I think, as aggressive as I am. So sometimes instead of being appreciated, sometimes medyo nagiging off siya, no? To the point may umaaway sa akin publicly for being too aggressive, no? But I think along the way naman, nag-work naman.
Persistence is always viewed as an ingredient to success, so it's great to be persistent. Would you like to share?
Yeah, sure. So I've always known that mentors are an important part of any journey or any person actually. It's not just an entrepreneurial journey, right? So I I started getting my feet wet and just getting exposed to technology startups back in university by joining the organizing committee of this national business competition. So it was a student point of view, and I was like, okay, this is a great chance for me to just be around entrepreneurs and investors to just absorb from an arm's length perspective. So that's what I did. So I organized a competition for 2 years as the lead. Through that was amazing because I used that opportunity to meet people who are actually doing stuff. So actual practitioners, actual execution people, and investors. So this was again back in Singapore where nothing much in the current internet sphere was really happening then, but that still gave me a lot of kind of ammunition that really worked on really well later on. So that was when I started. So there's no particular person I really looked up to. It was more like just looking at my surroundings and picking out people whom I can learn from, which was pretty much everyone back then, right? And so today I still count investors as my unofficial mentors slash official mentors. We check back in. One of them will call me from Canada, once a month or something. We'll have like a 10-minute chat and it'll be fantastic. So yeah, it's just a two-way conversation and it's like friends with senior. So they're like my semi aunt agony. I'll go to them sometimes with say a strategic problem. And so I think what's also important in this kind of question, the implicit part, is that I think as an entrepreneur, it's important for you to be able to have an avenue to speak to fellow entrepreneurs, and also entrepreneurs have also done it. Because the journey of an entrepreneur, as all of us know, is just very different from being someone in a startup. And I know that firsthand now as well because in Tech in Asia, I'm not the CEO now. I'm just one of the leads, right? And it's very different. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't have to worry about cash flow, admin, finance, and all the stuff that comes along, right? No longer chief everything officer. So I was amazed. And it's just very, very different. So I found it useful to reach out to my fellow founder, CEO friends, check back in once in a while. So these are something one should purposefully cultivate because if you're in a startup and you're running your own thing, you will tend to forget that this other side of you is neglected. You'll be focused on product, focused on cash flow, revenue, but you're like at the start of things you don't realize that you're being sucked in deeper and deeper, and actually you have to take a step back once in a while and regroup with your founder CEO friends. I think that's very important, and you have to consciously create and make time for that. If not, you'll be sucked in again into a black hole essentially. So I have consciously tried to make that happen quite a bit. And yeah, so I basically look up to a lot of people. Yeah, so whoever I can talk to and speak to and learn from, I'm learning from everyone here as well. So I've had good conversations for the past few days. Yeah, so everyone. Yeah.
So different, as you go through your journey, you definitely have a lot of different kind of people you can learn from. But at least for me, a lot of the people who are very, very successful, and I try, I go back to them. Can you be my mentor? I found that a lot of very successful people don't like to take any title like that at all. So definitely don't do that. And I think that the biggest thing, instead of putting a role and saying, would you be my mentor or whatnot, is really building more and more relationship with people that truly, truly care about you. What that mean will be, let's say, I've done many, many deals in my life, but literally you interact with a person, they will be saying something like, well, the deal is going to look like this, but this is what I would do to make sure that you're successful, and this is how we're going to build whatever it is. Like, I think the most important thing is to think about who do you actually really care about. Don't go to anybody and say, would you be my mentor? Because it's really one way. You should always think about how you're going to help this person. It's an attitude. Just because you have done less, that doesn't mean that you cannot add value to this person. It's a two-way street. I think everyone just wanted to have more and more people, not only that you like and you respect, but also people that will add value to your life. That's sort of the network that you want to build with people around you. And not everyone sort of on the same page, but if those people are not, you should just anyway. Um, so
Can
that's
I
it.
jump in a little bit as
Yeah.
well? So yeah, so I think if I want to quantify mentorship, wouldn't call someone a mentor, but it's more like mentorship comes in little units of advice, pieces of advice. These are units. So I'll be talking to you one day, and it's just one thing you say to me is so awesome. That's a piece of mentorship, right? And yeah, vice versa maybe. So I would rather call it that.
Well, yeah, I agree. Keeping the communication channels open and recognizing those in your community or in your networks who are like-minded and share the same sentiment, because it can be toxic if you don't surround yourself with those. They can help move you in the opposite direction instead of the positive direction. So that's true. So along the way, we talked about mentors and your journey. Do you want to share any of your challenges or some of the obstacles and how you overcome them? It would be interesting, I think, for the audience to hear how you've dealt with it. I mean, some have. Again, yesterday in yesterday's panel, it was really difficult for some entrepreneurs to go through some painful decisions and not have that level of support. But were there things that you experienced that were obstacles, but maybe you dealt with them a little bit differently because of some of your own personal experiences that you helped bring it into whatever it is that you were working on as part of the startup or the company that you were building? Yeah.
Um, I think, of course, you will always learn from experience, no? I remember there was a time during before 9/11, who would like to put up an outsourcing business in the Philippines or want to outsource work. And one of them is Michael Gleisner, who put up Bigfoot here in Cebu. So I remember arranging all the meetings then, and then when he got here, 9/11 happened, so he decided not to leave anymore and put up his entire business here. At that time. And I got the opportunity to work on projects where you more or less do the research and do the setting up of appointments between a potential investor or acquirer to a company. And some of them you eventually see it work, and some of them die down during the negotiations, among others. And I think that's where, like, if you are an entrepreneur, you realize later on that although you might be open, but at the same time you're not really ready to let go. And sometimes you are also blinded as to how what kind of business you have and how high value it really is, when it wasn't really that high value as you think it is. So, and I use that as an input in devising the programs that I do. And I also had failed several projects. Like, I tried buying a .com retail site, but the person did not really take care of it well. So I decided later on not to do that ever again and take over somebody's operation. We'd rather buy something that the person can continue and just support it. We also tried doing, because virtual assistants are very hot now. So a home-based elite program, training wannabe virtual assistants, and charge them a fee and issue certification. And then by the time they got projects, we realized that instead of them doing it themselves, they started outsourcing it. And the ones that they outsourced to did not deliver well. And good thing the clients were my club members. So they said, Janet, I thought she's certified. How come she did not deliver properly? And then that's when I had to halt the program. So I think if I think all of us can help or can be enablers for others, but rather than just trying to have a gunshot approach to any possible startup out there. You really have to look at what you're good at, what your strength is, and you invest on those projects that, or you collaborate with people that has the same strength as you. So in my case, it's like e-learning, training, well, if you well in this case now research. So I just look for projects like that, and mentor also. If I will work with people, also work with those types of people, and especially those who would also like to build their own identity. So that's where I can contribute the most and learn to just.
Thank you. Well, I think this is a wrap. I want to thank all the panelists here today. Hobbies, things of interest. I think playing to your strengths is one of the themes here, that each of you found something that you were passionate about or enjoyed and converted that into a real business. You surround yourself with positive influencers in your life, which serves as a pool of mentors, and that's helped contribute to your success, to your journey.
I want to, since we have very limited time, I just want to recommend this one book called Hard Things About Hard Things. It's the best business book that I have read, at least in the last 2 years. So good. So please read it by Ben Horowitz.
Right, great, great. Well, thank you. We'll thank our panelists
Thank
today.
you.
We have to wrap up.
All right, that was awesome. And it was great to see more women on stage. As I commented yesterday, we were all guys, and I like having diversity in the technology scene. I have music already cueing me. So we're queuing up for our break. Just a quick reminder, the World Startup Report is going in the breakout. Ann, who was just up on stage, she's going to be talking about Vietnam on the other side in a little bit. We're running a few minutes behind this morning, so head out to coffee and use the restroom quickly, and then we're going to transition into our next panel in about 5 minutes. All right. Thanks, guys. All right. Well, I'm super excited for our next panel. If you guys are still getting coffee, you better get back in here quickly because I'm going to start giving t-shirts away. Do you like these shirts? These are awesome, right? So these were designed by Mark Deutsch from Happy Garaje, and he's actually going to talk in a little bit. He's probably running right now because he's a little camera shy, but he is an amazing artist. So who wants a t-shirt? Okay. The last time I threw a t-shirt at a conference, I actually broke the roof, and then they deducted it from my hosting fee, which was 0, so I had to pay for the damages. No, I'm just kidding. I almost broke a Wi-Fi router in Smart. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Smart. Careful. I did that yesterday. Over here. Steven Jagger saved my life. Today the monitor saved you. Okay, t-shirt 1. Okay, one more. Okay, congrats. Now these t-shirts are for sale. They go to a great cause. They support techtalks.ph. They're awesome because they're just cool. They look good. They come in a myriad of colors, so you can match your style. They go with anything, with blue jeans, with board shorts. You're going to look good in this t-shirt. So pick one up. They're available outside in the lobby. They're 500 pesos each, and we might give a few more away later. So I'm going to kick it off and hand over the mic and the panel to a good friend. He recently just moved to Cebu. I like to think that I had some part in convincing him to come here. But he is a man who is going to change the world. He's the founder and CEO of Engage Spark, and they are doing some awesome things to make the world a better place. So none other than Ravi Agarwal.
Great. Thanks for the warm introduction, Dave. You did have a lot to do with my move here. You, Tina, Mark, you guys were awesome. All right, so I'd like to call the panelists up. Richard, Badri, Iba, Paul, come on up. So today we're going to talk about social enterprises. How many people here know what a social enterprise is? Raise your hand. Cool. Nice. All right, so I'll quickly introduce the speakers. We have a lot of stuff to get through today. And so I'm not going to read out bios. I'm just going to read out their titles. These are all really 4 smart and accomplished people. And I'm hoping very opinionated. And you'll see why. We've got Badri over here. He's investment director at Omidyar Network. Caliber. We've got Richard on this side, is the CEO, and then there's me. Actually, the title of this session, Can Philippines Become the Global Hub for Tech-Enabled Social Enterprise, came out of a conversation that I had with Paul Santos. He's a Filipino-American VC who lives in Singapore. And we were talking about, it seems a place. But before we get into that, let's talk about what is a social enterprise, because I expect that many people in the audience are not familiar with social enterprises. So from Wikipedia, the official definition is a social enterprise is an organization that applies commercial strategies to motivate improvements in human and environmental well-being, profits for external shareholders. It's a very controversial definition. It's a big tent. A lot of people have different perspectives and this. And today I'll ask that we don't get into that big debate, just debating that and not end up anywhere. So we're going to be a bit more focused today. Why social enterprises? Let me just give you a couple of bullet points about the Philippines. Earn less than $1 per day in the Philippines. That's about 25% of the population, $1 for food, cell phones, place to live, health, making a living, everything. On the other end, the top 40 families control up to 75% of the country's GDP. And from 2006 to 2012, there was no statistical improvement rates. So that's the problem that all of us have to figure out. How do we do our share in solving this? Because if we don't solve this, there'll be big issues, social turmoil, that will happen in the next few years. The economy is booming, but the benefits haven't really flowed down to the rest of the people in the economy. And that's where social enterprises come in. A lot of people, a lot of us included, think that the social enterprises are a solution to solving these problems. All right, so we're going to switch it up. I think many of you are probably bored in the usual panel sessions where everybody agrees about the same thing. We're going to do a game show. This is the agree or disagree game show. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to put up a series of statements one at a time, and I'll ask the panelists to put up their hands if they agree, and I'll ask two of the panelists, one who disagreed and one who agreed, to explain why. And we're going to pause. My panelists are scared. And if they all happen to be on the same side, then I'll ask someone from the audience to come up and state a contrarian view. So we'll get some audience participation. And same thing, don't play nice. Throw a bomb up there. And I might do the same thing. I might just poke one of the panelists to throw a bomb and poke someone. All right, so that's the panel format. I'm going to start off with the first one. I'm actually going to, for the first one is the title of the panel. Philippines, the statement here is, Philippines has all the necessary ingredients to be a global hub for tech. And I'm going to, instead of asking them to agree or disagree, because I think they all have their opinions on what ingredients are missing, I'll just give each person, just to warm up the panel, a few seconds, maybe one or two sentences to talk about what ingredients are missing. Do y'all have mics?
Yep.
All right, Paul, why don't you start?
So I think the Philippines does have all the ingredients, but we don't have it in the right quantity. So for example, I think we have big problems. We have a big market, but not enough entrepreneurs, not enough funding. There are entrepreneurs. There is funding, such as LGT Ventures here, but not in the right mixture to be able to create a hub for technology-enabled entrepreneurship.
I agree.
You fail.
We've got some incredibly passionate people. We've got a lot of pain, and through pain comes innovation. There's so much more than that. We need so much more support than that. We need access to capital. We need so many things for it to happen. So we're not there yet, but I'm in the stage here, proof of anything. We're getting there.
Robert?
Awesome. I think there are, lots of indicators that there are positive things. Just the panel, just the fact that we have a panel speaks for itself. I would specifically call out number one, radical innovation, like to call it. Radical innovation tends to emerge out of the US. And they solve a laundry problem or a typewriter problem, as I like to say. Philippines doesn't need a Yelp, it needs help. So,
who's tweeting that?
Radical innovation, incremental innovation, and third is business model innovation. A lot of today VCs, entrepreneurs look for the third bucket, which is just copycats of what's successful in the US. Can we replicate that? Local problems can be solved only by local solutions. We need more engaged sparks. We need more rappers. Right? So I think innovation is, as a culture, Asians, I'm going to be controversial and say we lack it, right? So we need more of that. Right? Second, I would say is risk capital. Um, philanthropic capital and government funding actually is the best funders of risk and innovation. As Maria was pointing out in an earlier this one, World Wide Web was a military project, defense project. Incidentally, Google was also for military, for the U.S. military, right? So you need more of that capital which spurs that innovation, and broadly these two.
Great. Thank you, Badri.
I don't think we know, and we haven't figured out how to bake the cake yet.
It's a great start. All right. Statement number 2. Philippines will organically become a global hub for tech-enabled. Who agrees? Raise a hand. All of you disagree? Who agrees? This is a play question. Respect no one. Who's really passionate about this answer?
So I think we need to ensure in the Philippines that we have a couple entrepreneurs or a couple startups in the social space that become very large, that expand beyond the Philippines. And we basically need the Fairchild semiconductor of the social enterprise space to then seed the organic growth of the rest of the tech-enabled social enterprise sector. So we need to prod and push and make sure that we get that success. And I think that will become the seed to organic growth in the future.
So one other comment?
I've lived here since 2001. Very little happens organically. Someone has to take something by the balls and make it happen.
For the contrarian view, but you've lived here since then, and there are way more social enterprises today than there were back then. So things are happening organically.
But not to become a global hub. Your question was more specifically to become bigger, better, become a global leader. It needs some impetus. It needs some people to take the board.
I'll just add one thing. I think all the elements, like you mentioned, which are important for becoming a hub, are present. Actually, Pierre Omidyar coined this term, social innovation hub. You have a generally moving towards progressive government, at least early stages of that. Inequality, like you just pointed out. Lots of problems, right? In each of aspects, daily life is difficult. So you need, for innovation to happen, you need that to happen, and lots of tech adoption. So I think those elements will probably make it. But you just need point and right.
Agreed. All right, third statement. Founders with a nonprofit background have an advantage over founders with a commercial background when starting a social enterprise. Who agrees? Who disagrees? All right, Badri. You're up.
Is because they lack an understanding of the customer's needs. For that one reason, right? How many of us have been to rural areas, spent a lot of time there? Actually, one thing that's very important is to build trust with the community. It takes a lot of time, right? So for these reasons, I think founders have a slight edge, and you can buy anyone else, right? The social.
You can buy anyone else. Iba, contrarian view.
Well, I started out as an entrepreneur, and along the way, I started visiting these off-grid communities and spending a lot of time on weekends. And then we had this discussion last night, and I thought there must be a way that I can do this, and we can scale it and help as many people as possible. And And I think it's not either or. It is a mix of that kind of group. And on that point, we spent about 50% of my team is targeted towards research. We set up our office walking distance or bicycling distance from our pilot stores. Yeah, that kind of thing.
So you're more in the middle.
Yeah.
Anyone have a harsh extreme that you have to come from a business background? Paul, Richard?
I think to be, I think to have cutthroat, go and get it. I think there's something for said for kind of coming from that background, and tech startups have that. I think it's really important. But again, the whole tech startup scene is very good at the product market fit. I think that's the point that Badri referred to, and generally, even if it's not for the bottom of the pyramid, they're able to do that. So as long as you can assure that they have the right people in the team and they can do that, I think it gives another cutthroat element that can drive bigger, further, quicker innovation.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you need both the execution skills and the understanding customer needs, really understanding them. Yeah. All right, next statement. Only the very rich can afford to give back. Only the very, very rich can afford to create a tech-enabled social enterprise. Who agrees? Disagreements first.
I think the only the very rich can afford to give back, but they don't. Especially in the Philippines, this is I think one of the things Badri and I talked about yesterday. There isn't a culture of philanthropy in the Philippines and in Asia. You see that in America, but here it's a kind of a culture of me, feudalistic, dynastic, clan, rather than actually thinking about, if I just take 1% less profit, I can actually impact the country and society that I live in and that my children live in.
Like the Gates Pledge?
Like the Gates Pledge.
I would just like to counter that point. In the Philippines, we're so used to all of these horrible things happening, and we're so used to giving. It's become part of our nature. Maybe we don't allocate 20% of our revenue, but everybody gives. And I think there's some, I won't go into the details of the metrics, but yeah, there are websites and their OLX has been able to prove that.
What about the rich,
very
though?
giving.
What about the rich?
I don't know about the rich, right? That's another thing.
What's your opinion? Do you think they give back? And are they the only ones who can afford to create a social enterprise?
I think for an average person, it is impossible to create a social enterprise. I think that you need access to capital. I think you need access to networks. And well, there are a lot of people out there that are willing to back these things. You just have to find the right people. But no, I don't think a normal person would be able to do that.
But could they learn to become a social entrepreneur if they joined you first?
The very rich?
No, just the average person. You said can't be.
They would still need access to capital.
I think the capital's coming, though.
The question here was, can they give back? Yeah, and yes, they can give back. It doesn't have to be money. It can be time. It could be your knowledge. It could be giving feedback to the entrepreneur about the problems they face. So I think they can give back, maybe not monetary.
And I think one of the things I saw volunteering in Africa was that there is a very robust social enterprise ecosystem in many places like Nairobi. The first wave were definitely the returnees and the expats driving that. But now there's a second wave of local entrepreneurs who don't come from a privileged background, who've been able to learn those skills, to Paul's point, from the ecosystem, and then start their own things. So I met quite a few, tons of local entrepreneurs who came from poor backgrounds or lower middle class backgrounds who were launching, and because they had some skills now, they were able to raise money, raise some capital, but mostly from donors in that ecosystem. All right, next statement. This is a bomb. It's okay to generate significant profits from the poor. Who disagrees? Who agrees? The rest of you agree. All right, Badri.
Is that because
You're the
gave you
money
this
guy
question.
here.
Yeah, I gave you the question as well.
You got Pierre Omidyar's money
Yeah, I just
burning
say,
through your pocket.
I just say, if you can, just go ahead and do it, right? As long as you're carrying a legal and ethical business. Very difficult to do it. Let's recognize that. So I would actually say it's not profits from the poor. You can call it profits through the poor. There's different ways of doing that. But simple answer, if you can, just go ahead and do it. Take a market-based solution. As Richard was just saying, you need that. I want to make this work. I want to make this work approach.
Iba.
When I think significant profit, I think tech, right? Where you have multiples of your. So the reason I disagree is because I don't believe in that. I believe that you have to think kind of out of the box as to who needs what and is willing to pay for it. But overall, I kind of agree with what you said. That market forces, if you're providing good product, fair value, not significant profit. Maybe it's a definitional debate.
If I can add, so he spoke about willingness to pay. People will be surprised how much the poor actually pay for things that they already get, right? I think cost of broadband is a oft repeated challenge here in the Philippines, right? Poor actually, people who can't afford it end up paying more cost per MB globally, right? Similarly, interest rates, right? When you're borrowing, and Richard can talk to this, right? The people who don't have access to banks actually end up paying far more interest rates than others, right? So I think there's also a difference between profiting and profiteering. Yes. Profiteering is wrong, but not generating profit.
But Badri, how would you have an entrepreneur stay on this side of the line of profiting? Because it's so easy, human greed. Once you're profiting, it's very easy to go over the other side of the line and become a profiteer. As Muhammad Yunus says, making money off the back of the poor is unethical.
Yes. So so we can leave Muhammad Yunus and Pierre Omidyar to fight with each other over that. But I think that's where market forces come in. If someone is actually making abnormal profits, somebody else will cut them on price and reduce those profits, bring them back to regress rate. So it's bound to happen.
Assuming efficient markets where there are balances.
Agreed. That's always the scenario you want to play in and operate in. People might make significant profits in between, like lottery, right? Let's not get paternalistic about what people do with their money. Number one use case is lottery. Number two use case is telecom. Telecom made money off the poor, right? So I think we should move away from that paternalistic approach and let them do what they want to do.
I'm excited about social enterprises that want to destroy businesses that make it expensive to be poor.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I'm also poking them on purpose, creating more controversy. But this is a big debate in social enterprise. There's the Muhammad Yunus camp, which says it is wrong to make money off the backs of the poor because they already make really hard choices between buying food or paying for airtime on their cell phone. That's a very difficult choice, or saving money for their kids' education, versus the Pierre Omidyar camp, which says all economic growth is good and it'll bring up the poor. Just to add a little bit more controversy, is there anybody from the audience who would like to present a quick opinion on this? Don't be shy. Come on up. Just come on up. I'll just give you the mic. Quick question.
Just a comment on that one is, again, it's to be politically correct, we will say no, but the reality is businesses actually build on more and more of less and less. The sachet model of shampoos, food, everything is built on getting as much as you can at a cost that is affordable to whichever part of the pyramid you're in.
There's a question in the back.
Come up here and grab the mic.
Hello.
Yep, you're on. All right.
Go ahead.
Doesn't it just depend on what you do with the profits?
Yep, that's a very valid point as well. Not to promote what we're doing, but we're building a not-for-profit business where it is a profit to make as much profits as possible. Sorry, it's a business that makes as much profits as possible. Instead of giving it to shareholders, we just recycle that.
Yeah, I mean, I run a non-profit here in the Philippines, and we generate some profit. But for example, we were teaching some fishermen how to paint, and then we gave them money for materials so they could paint, and then help them sell their paintings. We then charged them for the materials plus a profit, and then that money we took back in, and we used that to buy materials so that kids could learn to paint, and the same painter had to teach them for free.
Yep.
So, you know, money was being made everywhere, but at the same time, it's being used wisely.
Yep, and you bring up a good point. That's a big trend today that's driving social enterprises as well. Are NGOs building their social enterprise sides so that their revenue-making and profit-making business feeds cash for their charitable activities. So there are lots of NGOs that create restaurants, or hospitals tend to be those kinds of models as well, cross-subsidy models. All right. Rafi.
There's another one in the back.
Yeah, I was just going to say that not all social ventures generate revenue from the poor directly. They get money from many ways, a lot of times from NGOs. And if it's a technology solution, you're probably using their money a lot more efficiently than maybe they would be. So just because you're generating a profit doesn't mean it's money for this stuff, by any means.
Exactly. Yeah. Lisa. I think that's Lisa.
Yeah, thanks, Ravi. Yeah, one thing that has come to mind for me is Facebook.org launched just recently. You know, there's so many people who are being very critical, and I think it's us talking a bit on behalf of the poor, and I think that is just a difficult position to come from when you know, for us those technologies are just completely readily available, and people are profiting off of us and our, you know, desire to selfie and use Facebook and be connected, and so to come into it initially and say, no, these people shouldn't profit off this group of people, I think it's just kind of jumping the gun a little bit and not considering where we all come from.
Yep. Perspective. All right, this is the last comment we'll take before we move on to the next question, or next statement.
Thank you very much. Two questions, small one, a nasty and a nice one. The nasty question, is Unilever a social enterprise here in Asia? And the nice one, do you have 2-3 samples of successful and impactful social enterprise in Southeast Asia that you could share with us? Thank you.
I'm sorry, what was the first question?
First one, is Unilever a social enterprise for you guys?
Unilever, the big conglomerate, are they a social enterprise? It's a very interesting question. I know Badri is fuming, Eva is fuming. To answer this, Eva, go.
Is Unilever a social enterprise? No, they're not. They're an enterprise. What we're trying to do is we're trying to figure out how we can bring value and take from the profits of the big companies and kind of bring it back down so that it brings value to the micro entrepreneurs in the sari stores. So there's nothing wrong with it, but a social technology enterprise, significant profit. It should make fair profit, and try, if there are other ways of making profit, you get it from the guys who can afford it, not the people who can't.
Go, Badri.
Yeah, so let me start by saying now is the time. These are my personal views, not the house views.
Good, we're getting deeper.
Yeah. I don't think there is a term called social enterprise. I think it's enterprises that serve a segment by virtue of which they have social impact, right? By that logic, Coke, the shampoo model that we spoke about, and Unilever, they've all innovated in order to be able to serve that poor. I think it's a social enterprise. You're creating jobs. You're creating millions of jobs in a country. I think it's a social enterprise, right? That's, I think it's kind of linked to the earlier question around profits and what you do with the profits, right? One answer is question number 4, give back. But there are other interesting models that are emerging around community ownership, like in the apparel space, for example, where there's artisans who are involved in making native, homegrown, any kind of exports. You have a community ownership model where the enterprise, you create local communities, and a percentage of everything they make goes back. The community owns that entity, right? That's a very successful model which has been followed. So different ways to make sure you're giving back. But frankly, Coke is a social enterprise.
But then you could say every company that creates jobs is a social enterprise.
One of the definitions we should think about is social enterprise has to be scalable and sustainable. And it's only the large enterprises that have the level of impact that they can. Smaller enterprises just cannot. Different ways of slicing the pie. It's either the nature of service you provide, the target segment you go after. If you're either or, I would still categorize it as a social enterprise.
And we're fraying into this what is a social enterprise debate. We're going to come back from that shore, back onto land. Because that ocean is vast and deep. All right, next one. Oh, actually, the second question was, what are some examples of successful social enterprises in Southeast Asia? Just to address that real quick, you just want to throw out some names of social enterprises?
Rags to riches. Should I describe it?
What's the GK and GK?
Gawad Kalinga. They build communities for the poor, and they also teach the poor life skills, so that in order for you to stay and live in that community, you have to either work, you have to send your kids to school, you can, have affairs, so it's a unique model, and I think they've had some success in building hundreds of communities in the Philippines.
Yeah, I would say there's a few examples of successful ones, but in general, the social enterprise ecosystem is early. And that's why we're here, to see how we can get this moving along, to have, come back here in 3-5 years and talk about hundreds and hundreds of examples of social enterprises that are doing well on their way to scale. But it's early. Next statement. Developers and other staff, so geeks and everybody else working for a social enterprise, should take a pay cut or get paid less to work at a social enterprise. Who agrees? Who disagrees?
You need top talent. And I think, even in a normal technology startup, everyone kind of takes a pay cut in the beginning when you have no funding or you have no revenue. But in order for you to build a world-class, scalable tech organization, whether it's social focused or not, you need the best talent in the world.
Go ahead, Iba.
You're talking about technology, and I agree 100% that if you're going to get the best people, you have to pay for it. But it's still a startup. So startups, there should be some kind of investments.
So you're saying startup rules apply, not
yes,
social enterprise?
Not social. Startup rules apply.
Anybody in the audience who has a contrarian view? Oliver.
I super disagree for 2 reasons. One is asymmetric markets. So, for instance, if an investment banker is moving to social enterprise, you can expect to pay the same pay scale, because obviously the bankers will have completely different pay scale, especially if you're working in Singapore and Hong Kong versus if you're going to be working in Manila. So it was completely different markets. And then the second is, I guess, diminishing marginal returns on happiness. I think the empirical evidence shows that your happiness, at least in the U.S., is only maximized at like what, $80,000 a year or something. After that, every increasing marginal dollar of salary you make doesn't increase your happiness and satisfaction with your job at the same percent. So I guess the point is, depending on who you're hiring and depending which markets you're hiring from, I think a pay cut can make sense and still be able to attract the top talent out there.
JP.
test. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and disagree with you there, and this is totally not in my own self-interest at all. But I think you're working in an enterprise like this, you should be paying more for the top talent relative to a startup. And the reason for that is we're saying startup rules apply. That means, to me, 10, 12-hour days, 6, 7-day weeks, do whatever it takes to get the job done. At a startup, you own a portion of the company. You own that upside. And the reason you're working that hard is because you're trying to build something that's going to be worth an incredible amount of money. You don't have that upside at a social enterprise. There is no exit event. There's no liquidity event. And so if we're talking from a purely economic standpoint here, you're trying to retain the sort of top talent that's coming from Wall Street or Silicon Valley. You're going to have to provide something that's not equity to compensate for that. And maybe it's the satisfaction of doing something that actually matters, and that makes up for it. But maybe not.
All right, Oliver seems really fidgety. You definitely should not pay more. I was getting paid 500,000 pesos a month at McKinsey. Took an 80% pay cut, to be able to do a startup. And I think if you really want to recruit, the best talent, I think that becomes adverse selection for you because number one, you don't need to pay nobody's gonna pay me, more than 500,000 pesos a month here, right, to work in a social enterprise. You don't want to be talking to people who have that mindset. And at the end of the day, it's super cheap to live in the Philippines, right? You can be comfortable, have enough savings, live simply, and do what you love. Any other contrarian views? Oh, go ahead, sir.
I'm going to give another view, which is sort of somewhere in the middle. And I think that the basic level of salary, if you like, can be lower, and I think it probably should be lower, just to put the onus on performance. And if the social enterprise has targets, it has goals, it has to make money, or whatever it has to do, then okay, let these stars have the opportunity to earn even more perhaps than they would in the social sector, but only if they deliver. No, don't deliver, you sit back on your heels like you could maybe in a commercial company.
Yep, good point. Last comment on this question from Avner.
I'd say that it depends on what kind of social enterprise it is. So if it's a social enterprise where it really matters that the employees actually care about the mission and the goals of the social enterprise because they have to go out in the field and they have to work with the people who will be the beneficiaries or whatever the right term is of the social enterprise, then they probably should take a pay cut because those people will have that sort of passion and drive to do good. Whereas a social enterprise where you don't need your employees to have that passion and desire to do good and they just need to get stuff done, then maybe they shouldn't take a pay cut.
Just one more
Did
thing.
Go ahead, Eva.
I just wanted to say that in SARI, we've all taken massive pay cuts. I'm saying we should standard rates, but for example, one of my team used to be an executive at Target. She's now getting $500 a month going to SARI stores, and we're all passionate about it. But I'm saying that we should get that fair market value, but we don't.
Go ahead, Richard.
And my final point was kind of, I think, to the same, that I think salary is one component, but if you look at the employee value proposition you try and put together for your employees, both from the hiring and then the different challenges you can give them, one of the most important things we've found, whether we're recruiting in Manila or New York or wherever, is do you want to change the world? And that is one of our hiring decisions. It's one of our value propositions. It's something we drive to the organization. It's very different from salary. It's do you want to change the world?
Yep, agreed. I think if you can change the conversation away from salary to meaning, if you want to do something meaningful by changing the world, then you get into the conversation of what's a fair salary. And a fair salary is one that is enough for you to live on and do well and buy the things and build your family. But you need to have that 500,000 pesos per month paycheck every month that Oliver gave up. All right, so we have less than 5 minutes left. What I wanted to do for the last 5 minutes was, the point of this panel was to have a controversial but interactive and meaningful discussion on social enterprises, and really, how do we make Philippines the global hub for tech-enabled social enterprises? So I'm going to flip to the last question, the last slide. And I'll ask each of the panelists to opine for maybe 30, 45 seconds, because that's all the time we have left. What are the steps? So to make this panel a constructive panel, what are the steps needed to build Philippines as that global hub for tech-enabled social enterprises? What should we as an ecosystem do next so that it's not an organic but a thoughtful way to build this and have in 5 years dozens and dozens, maybe even hundreds of social enterprises that are on their way to scale? We'll just go down. Richard?
So I think the first thing is a group of people deciding they want it to happen and agreeing and saying, hey, we think we want to do this, we think it is the place, understanding the market. I think everyone's agreed. The market conditions in the Philippines are right. You can find technology solutions to have significant impact on the underprivileged in the Philippines. So I think no qualms about that. I think there's amazingly talented, amazing passion in the Philippines you've seen as well, and everyone here has seen. To me, it's about is now putting that and really clearly explaining to people that, hey, you can get involved in technology, social enterprise. It can impact amazingly. There is money available coming into the Philippines to support it, and there's a group of people that want to build an ecosystem. So I think that's the first stepping stone that has to be developed.
So a group that decides that we're going to do this. Audrey.
I think 2 or 3 things that can be done immediately. One is create an enabling policy and regulatory environment. I was just speaking to Richard yesterday. There is no clear financial inclusion policy in the Philippines. That itself has 2 benefits. It sends a signal to the rest of the world who's looking at the Philippines now that it's progressive, we want to make a difference. On the other side, lack of policy or lack of clarity on policy actually just completely stunts growth, right? And what it also does is creates a lot of noise. Right? M-Pesa grew in Kenya because there was no policy. There's a lot of risk in a model like that, right? So you want to, I think the first step is creating a policy and regulatory environment. The second is I would again get controversial and say pull out the DOST into 2, get ICT as a separate ministry, ICT for development as a separate sub-ministry. We have seen this globally, that model works because there's a champion within the government whose responsibility is towards that. And to Richard's point, develop an ecosystem of participants, right? You need, first step, you need visionaries, right? Identify the Elon Musk, identify the Tony Starks. They can create change like no one else, right? Easier said than done, but also I think successful exits on the commercial side tends to flow through because new generation entrepreneurs tend to be more to give more. So I think some of these elements, if they come together, will be very.
We're running out of time. Eva?
Basically, a mix of both. What you said. You need not just one Elon Musk. You need a class. You need people thinking and looking to the future and creating great things. And that's there's a lot of other things.
Yep.
My last point, I mean, if it's social enterprise, I think it involves a community, and what is the community of leaders and visionaries that's going to help organize and identify what are the problems we want to solve. It may be a policy and government problem first before we can actually lay the groundwork for social tech-enabled enterprises here to flourish. So I think we kind of need, we need our own conference like this to talk about how we organize ourselves to attack these problems.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with you guys. I think the next step is we need to build together a group of people who are ready to step up and drive this forward. Because it's not going to happen on its own, and we need to make this happen if we want to see a more equitable society here in the Philippines and globally. Well, we're out of time, and I want to say thank you very much for being guinea pigs in our game show. This was a new experiment. I hope you all enjoyed the game show. Dave says agree. I hope all of you agree. And I'll pass it over to Dave. Thank you.
Thank you, Ravi, and our panelists. That was a lot. So it's such a great topic, and today I've just really enjoyed kind of the track that we're taking, and we're continuing on in that idea of concepts and technology that can really change the world and also empower individuals. So our next topic is we dare you to use bitcoins. Bitcoins have become an accepted mode for payments of goods and services in the online world. So how can you use them and how can you benefit from them? So I'd like to invite up Ron Hose, the co-founder and CEO of Coins.ph. He's going to give a brief introduction and then chair our panel on Bitcoins. And I'll let him introduce the panelists with him. So let's give a round of applause for Ron.
Hi, everybody. My notes are in my laptop, but I'll try and take it from here and then go up on the stage. Thank you, everybody, for staying here. So before we start, I just want to say thank you to Tina, Dave, the GoUp team for this being put into this, and it's really exciting to see how many more people we see here and how much has happened since last year at GoUp at Boracay. Startups for me are not really. They are about upwards mobility. They're about the opportunity for anybody, anyone, regardless of background, to turn their sweat equity and into something that is that promise them a different future. And I think it's just really incredible to see how our movement is growing. And I guess we're here today to talk about Bitcoin. Is financial inclusion, and um, it has a lot to promise in other emerging markets, and that's why I think the pound. In the Philippines, about 25, and if you really drill down, it's actually far less that have access to bank. That's never going to change, and the reason it's not going to change is because traditional banking is expensive. If you operate what's driving the VC uh, is a very good solution. Digital currency is a very good solution to this issue because you can now trust this to people with a mobile phone without having all the overhead logistics of a bank and retail location. So if you think about how much it costs to drive a product like WhatsApp or Facebook to the end user, we're talking about cents. Bitcoin, there is coin exchange, coins.ph, and there's probably another version right now. There is looking into this market. And anywhere you read it, any tech publication, the Philippines is a sample market of what can be done. Yeah, and that's a place to be. And yeah, I really look forward to the discussion. So I think without going into much more, I'm going to get on stage. Every single person in the room here will have a chance to use Bitcoin and will have a chance to get Bitcoin. And we're going to stay tuned. We're going to keep it to the end of the panel. We'll make sure that everybody has the opportunity to live with Bitcoin. Here we go. So maybe I'll let you guys start with introducing yourself. I came in last, so I'll do it last. Let's start from the left.
I'm Sam Kadura. I am co-founder and CEO of buybitcoin.ph. We launched in January of this year. We're the first exchange to enter the Philippines and really come up with a formal process to pretty much go between pesos and Bitcoin.
I'm Nick Sullivan. I'm the founder of ChangeTip, which I think is the easiest way to get Bitcoin. It allows you to send and receive Bitcoin over social networks like Twitter, and then user-generated content sites like YouTube, Reddit, GitHub.
Which is a wonderful thing for Bitcoin. We'll talk about that later. In Singapore, I work for a company called BitBit, which is a Bitcoin exchange based in Singapore. US dollars, Singapore dollars, and euro back into Bitcoin and back. I also am president of Access, which stands for Association of Cryptocurrency Enterprises and Startups in Singapore. It's a bit of a mouthful. It's a trade body, and we aim in Singapore for the industry, and we aim to dialogue with people, educate people and government.
Great. And I'm Ron. I'm the CEO of Coins.ph. So I think maybe a good starting point to kind of relate this to the local market. The Philippine ecosystem has been receiving a lot of press coverage recently, specifically around Bitcoin, and we consider some of the other usages. I'm interested to hear from you guys what does the Philippines in particular have to gain from Bitcoin?
Yeah, so I'll start. I mean, it's a big reason why I'm here. Coming from San Francisco, so why trade myself all across the world? And the reason why is because there's such a good opportunity here for Bitcoin to leapfrog over traditional banks and credit cards and have Bitcoin become the easiest way that people move money around electronically. I think that in the Philippines, I saw a stat that 10% of the GDP comes from cross-border remittances, people sending money back home. So there's a real good pain point that can be Bitcoin. And then it's very social friendly culture. So there's a lot of people that are going to be accepting each other. So that's the opportunity that I see here.
E-commerce, e-commerce economy in Southeast Asia. I think Ronnie put it very eloquently. Not a lot of people have a bank account, let alone a credit card, and Bitcoin gives everyone a quick outlet to immediately become a competitor in the global economy, whether they're selling small products or large products. Your typical merchant servicing help solutions can be a little bit costly. So I think Bitcoin can be a big here.
A use case for Bitcoin in the Philippines. I struggle to think of use cases where Bitcoin is mainly being developed and mainly being used. In the US, most people have banking, most people have credit cards, the same in Singapore. In the Philippines, you have a very interesting dynamic where people, there's a very high penetration of social media. So where change can really help move money around on Facebook and social media. And a lower penetration of credit cards. With Bitcoin, you don't need a bank account. You don't need a credit card. You do need a way of getting it, which I think is some of the problems that will only be solved in the countries where it's a problem. No one in Silicon Valley understands the problem of, maybe with present company accepted. No one in Silicon Valley can really understand the problem of emerging economies because they simply don't live it and breathe it. I think the exciting innovation, the real things that will change finance will happen driven from emerging countries like the Philippines.
It's quite ironic that the Bitcoin adoption is highest in the US per capita, but it's where it's needed the least because we have such a well-established financial infrastructure. So agree with you there. There's another point that I wanted to add, which is the globalization of money. I think that once we have an easier way to move money around from person to person, lots of behaviors that don't exist today are going to exist, and it's going to be easier for countries like the Philippines to be able to get money from the rest of the globe.
So Anthony, how would you compare and contrast the ecosystem here versus the ecosystem of Singapore?
I think there's similarities and differences. Similarities, everyone's starting from a very low base. When we first did this a year ago, 2 years ago, you speak to a group of people and maybe 10% have heard of Bitcoin, no one would really understand it. Now, it's starting to change both in Singapore and the Philippines. People are starting to hear about it, and that's good. Whether you're hearing about it from the Silk Road and Mt. Gox, whether you're hearing about it from bad press or good press, it's still getting higher in mind share. I think that's positive. The differences between Singapore and Philippines, I think I've touched on before, penetration of services is very different. I think there's an imbalance there. But I think that's where Bitcoin can have the most impact. I don't think Bitcoin in Singapore is going to really help in the next 10 years. Hopefully Singapore will be a hub like it is for finance in Southeast Asia. It's not going to help the average people on the street, where here there is a small chance, there is a chance, if we do it well, if we do it right, there's a chance that we'll make an impact.
Yeah, I think it's all about the execution here. And so far, all the Bitcoin companies in the Philippines, have been executing well and very quickly. And it's not just what's going to happen here, though. I think it's also what's going to happen abroad. I mean, for instance, we want really remittance to grow. Population of overseas Filipino workers in the Middle East. In the Middle East, Bitcoin economy is non-existent much until you see other regions really grow. For instance, how are we going to grow the remittance? So we've got there's a lot of work to do still. Whereas Singapore is way more ahead.
Yeah, so I'll give the Silicon Valley perspective. I'm not sure how valuable it's going to be for the white guy on the stage to talk about Philippine effect, but Silicon Valley ecosystem for Bitcoin, a lot of people are analogizing it to the way that the internet was in between 1991 and 1994. It's still really hard. I don't know if anybody here tried to use the internet in that day, but it's hard. It's very difficult. But Bitcoin still, it's a challenge. But I think a lot of people aren't just dismissing it because that's where we're at. They see its potential and they see where it's going. And so Andreessen, Horowitz, Excel, and others have put over $70 million in US companies to solve the Bitcoin problem and try to make it easier to use, getting us to 94 in the internet. The ecosystem has developed significantly from what I've seen, even in the last 6 months. Went to a Bitcoin conference in December in Las Vegas, and it was a mixture of crowds. It was the guys that really don't like the Federal Reserve Bank, the anarchists that want to take power back away from governments and banks and get it into the hands of people. There was another batch of people that was the privacy freaks. Usually those are the ones. Well, who knows what they were doing with currency. And then there was a bunch of investors that were in the room and quite clueless about what Bitcoin was, and they just wanted to get smart. I've seen, fast forward about 6 months, I've seen a lot of financial infrastructure guys get involved. So people coming from Wall Street and coming from banks They recognize that the spot that Bitcoin is at right now is we need to be building infrastructures. We need to be building out large sets of tooling. And so I think the ecosystem is maturing. The next step is going to be mass consumer adoption.
So maybe on that topic, I mean, what do you see as the pushes? What are things that Bitcoin grows in this market? What's
So, I mean, we were just talking about one, which is cross-border remittances, sending money back home. I think there's a lot of interesting use cases for micropayments. When it gets into, Changeship, the bigger vision of what we're doing is building a micropayment infrastructure for the web. And if you make it super easy to move money around from person to person with low fees, there's all kinds of behaviors that businesses say they're going to. So, actually, I think in the end, Ron, you're going to get to some real interesting use cases in the future, and I'll wait to talk about those.
Well, I have a slightly different opinion. Remittances, Bitcoin, I've remitted money from Singapore to Indonesia, for example. I think Bitcoin is terrible for remittances at the moment. It was the most expensive, it took the longest. Western Union was wonderful, it got there instantly, there's Western Unions all over the place. And we need a roadmap to get to remittances. And I think people are talking about Bitcoin remittances right now. You've got to buy into it and then you've got to buy out of it. Why do that? Why add an extra currency when you're only converting from one currency to another? You're adding a third one. It's additional friction. But what you said, thank you. What you said about micropayments is much more interesting. There is a use case here. I'll describe it very quickly. Someone without a bank account, without a credit card, wants to buy something online, an online good, whether it's buying airtime, whether it's buying extra lives in a game or getting past that level in Candy Crush. But you don't have a credit card, so you can't buy that. And with Bitcoin, you don't need an address, you don't need a credit card. You can have the Bitcoin and then you can send it to the game and you can unlock that level. And that's just gaming, but that is one specific use case we can talk about, which is actually useful.
I see Sam on the edge of his seat to respond to that. So. I mean, remittances right now, I agree. There's a little bit of friction there for someone to buy Bitcoin in this country off an exchange, if there even is an exchange, and then sell it on this side. It's a little bit of a process, right? But I think to really get that process to work, it'll require a lot of educating the market, a ton of educating the market. Have the coins right up to this wallet, and send them to this wallet, and we'll liquidate them. I mean, it's a little long of a process, but I think an alternative use for it is not at all. I've had this argument a lot with my partners, like what's the best way to really use Bitcoin for remittance? Do you just come straight up and say, hey, set up a wallet, do all this, blah, 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 or do we just not even tell them at all? And we use it as a back-end business process.
So how do you solve for two FXs instead of one? I just don't get that. Until people are paid in Bitcoin, and until people can spend Bitcoin, and then there's only one currency. One's better than two when it comes to remittances and moving. But adding currencies is crazy. You had a
Yeah, so adding currencies does add complexity. That can be abstracted away. The total friction, though, exists today. If you compare, say, 9% for Western Union is what it costs to move money. Even the one step into Bitcoin and then the one step back out to fiat on the other side doesn't add up to 2%. It's good, though, to have difficult customers in the room. I think it was Bill Gates that said that you learn the most from your difficult customers. So hold the standard high so that all the Bitcoin companies work to make this problem easier for everybody.
So do you guys see Bitcoin as a threat to existing infrastructure players like banks, money remitters, MoneyGram, etc.?
No. Not right now. I think Bitcoin and banks can play nicely together, hold hands and work together. I think Bitcoin can solve problems that banks just cannot solve. Someone without an address cannot get a bank account because of government policies which are appropriate. Without a bank account, you can't do lots of things. But with Bitcoin, you don't need that physical address. Lots of people don't have addresses in the world. Silicon Valley doesn't realize this yet. Everyone has an address in Palo Alto.
So I think I can put banks into three categories based on the conversations that I've had with them. One is just clueless. They have no idea what Bitcoin is. They don't know why they should pay attention to it. Their friends tell them they should pay attention to it, so they're trying to look into it. They don't know what's going on. Another group that is just terrified. They don't know, or I shouldn't say terrified. I should say paralyzed with waiting to see what everybody else is going to do, or waiting to see what regulators are going to do, because they want some clarity. And then the companies, then there's a third batch, which they are terrified because they see it as a threat. They see that Bitcoin, by its definition, was built to take, quote, the middleman out of transactions and allow a transaction from me to another person in this room without having to have some third-party entity verify that transaction. And once we get to that world, I think the banks are going to be scrambling to provide value in other ways.
Yeah, I don't see it as a threat in the immediate future, but the banks can really use Bitcoin as an opportunity. Not only the banks, but the remittance outlets as well. Yeah, I mean, I think there's, if they're willing to work together, I mean, this is just gonna do wonders for everyone, I think.
So my question is, really not a lot of people know about Bitcoin. Definitely not in emerging markets. And what do you think are the steps that we need to take as a community to really drive Bitcoin forward? What are the things that are going to change the ecosystem dramatically?
I mean, educating the market, but more importantly, building trust. A lot of people here, in the Philippines especially, they hear, a lot of people I've talked to in conference, they hear the negative things about Bitcoin. Negative things stand out. Is it being used for illicit activity, drugs? But if you look at the numbers, I mean, cash is still the number one vehicle for drug trade in the world, not Bitcoin. So it just takes a lot of educating the market, building trust. Filipinos tend to be very brand sensitive, and whether it's building up your own Bitcoin company brand here in the Philippines or partnering with a well-established remittance brand or a bank brand, I think that'll really help drive Bitcoin adoption.
So I put the answer into two categories. One is reducing friction, and I put friction in a number of different categories. The amount of time that something takes, how difficult it is, and how much it costs. Across the board, we can work to reduce friction around Bitcoin and make it easier for everybody to use. And then not just getting rid of the bad use cases of Bitcoin, but let's start highlighting some good use cases of Bitcoin so people start to see what's possible with Bitcoin that's not possible today.
I think what he said, essentially, friction is one thing. People are reducing friction in the Bitcoin space with things use cases that may not be really compelling. Finding and targeting specific use cases that can only be solved with Bitcoin and not with traditional finance and not with companies like Square. Precisely what Nick is doing in the Bitcoin space. Finding compelling, useful use cases and then solving for them and then making them frictionless. That gets around education, because then when people really want to use it, they educate themselves. You don't have to preach from altars and talk at conferences. People find it useful. So, yeah, my hat. I take my hat.
So we want to maybe take it out and open it to the audience if anybody has any questions.
The main thing that stops most of us from using it on a regular basis for payments and all is the volatility. I mean, the price that changes. Like, I mean, I get a $10,000 and by the time I cash it, it might just become much less. What do you think about it, and what's the future of that?
Runstock, a fantastic business model. What I think you're trying to do, starting Bitcoin exchanges in different countries, and then with the ability to join them up, so that someone can, and this may help with the country, can use one currency to buy Bitcoin and simultaneously sell it in a different country on a different exchange that's joined, and sell it for that local currency. Then you've only got two bank wires. It doesn't solve for the unbanked, but it does solve for the remittance thing. And I've forgotten your question now, but I think this is how we're going to solve the volatility. Because you don't take it then, it's instant. It's a buy and sell at the same time in two different places geographically.
So volume is inversely correlated to volatility is inversely correlated to liquidity and volume. So as more and more people start to use Bitcoin, we should see it stabilize in price. On a long-term basis, there is a finite amount of Bitcoins that will ever be made based on the way the currency is constructed. So go up if we follow the basic rules of supply and demand. That being said, the real solution that we've seen crop up in the United States with startups there for this problem is effectively just using Bitcoin as an intermediate transaction, and then it's converted immediately. So you're not holding Bitcoin for any longer than you have to, and reduce all the risk of the volatility.
Yeah, to kind of add to what Nick said, liquidity volume. Also, a big factor I think that plays into that is you've got a little bit of a chicken and the egg problem here. You're not going to see massive user adoption until people also realize, hey, I can spend my Bitcoin too in these places. So businesses adopting it as a payment. I think that'll also I think those two need to rise simultaneously.
Right, so I'm being told our time is up. So just as a wrap-up question, I'm kind of interested to hear what is your future prediction? Like, how do you see Bitcoin looking like in 12 years, particularly in emerging markets?
12 months, not 12. 10 years of like dog years. 12 months in Bitcoin is about 7 years of your life.
One quick prediction.
Quick prediction, emerging markets will develop different types of use cases and solutions and solve them with Bitcoin compared with the US and developed countries.
I'm not going to do this one quick. When I start to think about what can happen with a micropayment infrastructure for the web, there's all kinds of interesting behaviors that we're going to start to see. The first one that I'm really excited about is actually changing the way that the online advertising ecosystem works. We've lazily accepted that the right way to monetize content online is through advertising, but that's kind of silly if you really step back and think about it, because the real value is the people producing the content and the people consuming the content, and advertising is acting as a leech off the side in order to extract that value. Payment infrastructure, we could allow people to get paid directly for their content. So, for example, the internet, there's a handful of YouTube videos a year that deserve more than a like, and you actually want to be able to give that person a quarter, a nickel, a dollar for what they've done. You're going to start to see people be able to directly monetize what they're producing by hooking it up to an efficient payment mechanism that allows people to do that. There's micro crowdfunding, microfinance is the idea of making it really easy for charities and cause mobilization of money. I'm talking to at least 2 different companies right now about enabling live chats with customer support to receive tips, so that when people are doing a good job of customer support, that they're providing the person on the other end. So we're going to start to see all kinds of money flow much freer around the globe in the next 12 months.
Yeah, I mean, not just Bitcoin itself as a cryptocurrency, but I think also the Bitcoin protocol, the decentralized structure of a public ledger is really gonna, I guess, as Anthony was saying, you're just gonna see more different use cases for the decentralized system. And that's, really what I find fascinating about the Bitcoin technology. It's just, you're hearing about these new different, whether it's smart contracts or micropayments, I think that will continue to develop. And that will only just drive adoption, next year. And I think you're going to see a few more in a year for Bitcoin. We've seen a lot of big companies adopt it, so I think it's going to continue next year.
I want to thank you guys for, you guys have made it a way to actually get in for this panel, and we really appreciate it. I guess before we wrap up, so we promised that we give everybody here a chance to get some Bitcoin. Maybe before that, I want to tell you guys what you can actually do with Bitcoin, because that's way more important than just getting it. So with Bitcoin in the Philippines right now, you can obviously get cash in thousands of retail account, delivered door to door, in through mobile money, and that's through a variety of different exchanges that are already operating in the country. More excitingly, you can shop online, so you can buy things at international websites like Expedia, Overstock.com, Deal.com, Metro, Cash Pinoy, and you guys are actually the first to really bench online and also accepting Bitcoin. You can pay funds. There's actually quite a bit that you can do already with Bitcoin. And maybe Nick.
So the thing that we set up for you guys is changed it. It works on a bunch of ways because this is quick. If you send a tweet and then mention Go, it'll respond back with a link for everybody $5 worth of. Yeah, change it. Hashtag Go. Go.
Change it is the easiest way to get and transfer Bitcoin. And to get you started, you can try something.
First come, first serve. This morning I didn't like yesterday's, but we're just great. We're guys okay? Lunch is coming, don't worry. Awesome kind of book. As Maria alluded to, technology and disasters, and we built upon with social enterprise and now seeing tech in the market. We're closing this morning with a talk entitled Rise Up from Disasters, Tech to the Rescue. This is just talking about some of the lessons that have been learned and innovations resulting from disaster relief and rescue efforts, opportunities for collaboration, cooperation, and further innovation among the tech, startup, rescue, and relief, and social digital communities. I'd like to call Antonio Cruz, who is the founder of Tweet Up Manila, and a lot of the hashtag Rescue PH, Relief PH, and just he's been a driving force, especially when Typhoon Yolanda hit, but even before and after that. So, Tonio, please come up. He's going to share some slides with us and close out this morning's session. Thanks, Tonio.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, especially to the Filipino geeks, and special welcome to our foreign friends. Let's breeze through this. The Philippines is a social media capital, made use of social media since 2009 to provide people help during disasters. As you know, the Philippines is along the typhoon belt. We welcome dozens of typhoons in a year coming from the Pacific. And this very province welcomed Yolanda on Haiyan last year. And then a little bit earlier, there was an earthquake in the nearby province of Bohol. So for the past 2-3 years, the Philippines has been using hashtags to coordinate relief and rescue efforts. These hashtags were produced and introduced by ordinary people, netizens, like you and me, and the government was forced to adopt it since 2011, I think. And one of the first typhoons that where made an impact was Typhoon Ondoy, which hit Manila. So there was one page devoted by Google for all the efforts. I go to this page to find out what was happening, how they could help, what was happening on the ground, who needs rescue. Just imagine the national capital of Manila was underwater. The roofs of their houses begging for help. So social media and digital playing a big role since that time. Social media channels and a number of websites. One of the best websites to come out came from Cebu. That's Bound PH, and it aggregated information coming from all sources, all verifiable sources, so that donors public could make sense of what's happening in the relief and rescue effort. But since ways to improve relief and rescue missions. So moving towards building relief and rescue. So we'd like to end time. We cannot second guess where the next typhoon will hit. And then we're also stressing preparedness. So it's a challenge for the tech community. How are we going to teach the public something about preparedness? Less about disaster relief and response, but more about preparing our communities, our startups, our offices for the next big disaster. Now there are opportunities for you to collaborate with relief agencies, big foreign-funded relief agencies that are looking for help. Millions of dollars went to the Philippines. There's only a very small percentage. Think about the two ones. Later I'll show you an example. And then upgrade the relief efforts that we have seen ever since Yolanda. So one app that the government has introduced is Project NOAA. It enables Filipinos to predict flight across 7 islands. If you're not a geek, it would be hard for you to make sense of it. We want the community to help improve the UI. And what is opportunities public service? We always hope that our community, especially the tech community, the geek community, would involve themselves in public service. We've been talking about raising profits since yesterday. Maybe we could also talk about in our startups and communities about doing public service or public good. And engaging in disaster relief operations, in making tech work for relief work, would allow you to showcase your talent, to test your talents. Help organizations like CDRC, or Gawad Kalinga, or the Red Cross make a trailblazing app. It would allow your engineers to test their talents and to train them. And it would also open opportunities for networking for you. Many, both foreign and local, are involved in disaster relief. So maybe that could be your best ticket to opening doors for you. And then there's a potential for opening a new field for the tech community. What's stopping the tech community from introducing CIOs and CTOs to these big relief organizations or entire digital departments or digital units? It's an opportunity that's waiting to be seized by the tech community. And there's no stopping typhoons from coming to the Philippines. And then 2 years from now, less than 2 years from now, there will be elections. I'm sure you're familiar with what happened in Jakarta, in Indonesia. The tech community was so much involved in change making in Indonesia, and they unveiled a crowdsourced pit card. So prepare for the 2016 elections. Make yourselves relevant. And working endlessly many hours a day sometimes bores us. Sometimes we turn cynical. And well, the challenge of social good is to fight boredom. People. So I hope that the tech communities, the geeks around here, would take hold of social good as one of its causes, aside from raising profits or similar things. And then make tech work for rescue operations. Well, let me end with a good example about some sort of tech. All over the Philippines, since time immemorial, the Filipino-Chinese community regularly builds places, what do you call this? They spend for fire trucks. They volunteer to be firefighters, especially in the big cities. And people are wondering, why are the Chinese so worried about fires? It's a good cause for them, but it also benefits them. It benefits the general public because they be in a position to fight fires, but it's also good for their own companies, for their own stores, because with fire trucks and firefighting operations being handled by the Filipino-Chinese community, any fire that would hit a store would be easily put out. So just think about it, and think about all your startups, all your home-based operations. That's along the path of typhoons. That's the possibility of the next earthquake hitting many places in the Philippines. That's in the ring of fire. And think about what the Filipino-Chinese community did. So maybe Geeks on the Beach to think of disaster relief as its social good project moving forward. If you don't know it, Ondoy, the mascot of Goa, is named after the Philippines. So it's a constant reminder that we could do something. We could do something great, and the people are waiting for you. The people are waiting for you to amaze them with tech, with innovation that would help them and help you also. So that's it. And let's work together towards making this happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Antonio. That's awesome. Community rise up. And speaking of community
Beach. We're getting ready to close for line of hunger pains right now. But I want to invite Tina up. She's going to share briefly. And then Mark Deutsch, the creative director of Geeks on the Beach, will come up as well. And for lunch today, there is a plan. We promise to try to be iterative and have a better system than yesterday, so we'll announce that in a few.
Thank you guys. Some of you are not familiar with Tech Talks, so I wanted to share a little bit more information about it. Sorry for the commercial, but this is absolutely necessary. In order for us to have the next Geeks on the Beach next year, do we want one? Do we want one? Hapit na good. We're almost done. So Tech Talks is a nonprofit organization. It's a community of people who love technology, business, startups, and making the world a better place. Next, please. Next. Okay, founded in 2012 because I was still based in San Francisco in California and I wanted to come back to the Philippines. So I said in my next vacation to the Philippines, I would just create a group to try and figure out what was going on in the Philippines if I was going to base myself here. I was trying to escape from America, and I did. Finally, 2 years ago, I moved back, and it will be 2 years and 3 days, 2 hours and 3 minutes. So, next. So I'm just going to read it because this is pretty good. To have a healthy startup ecosystem that will attract entrepreneurs and nurture startups, that's the vision. I guess that's my vision. So what's happening in the background is you see me all the time, but there's a community behind me. Wesley's here. Wesley, can you stand up? From mynemo.com. Wesley's been there from the very beginning. When we started MyNemo about 2.5, 3 years ago, we were also starting out with Tech Talk, so I've adopted him to be the, can you turn around and say hi to people? See how guapo he is? See, he's our Manny Pacquiao of Cebu startups. Because we need role models. Our young people need role models in order to hitch their stars too. So that's what we want to do. And where are we? Next. So we have programs. I just want to go to the triangle slide. Yeah. So remember, have you heard of Farm to Market Highway? When you're in the boonies, you're a farmer in the mountains, you need a road to get down to your local market so you can sell your produce. Does that make sense? Yes? No? Yes. Okay. We are an agricultural country, the Philippines is, so we have farmers and we want all the farmers to be able to sell their goods for economic growth, right? So in traveling with USC last year, to Cagayan, Zamboanga, and Davao, I realized that for the meetups, for Tech Talks. So what happens with Tech Talks is, okay, I don't know if you can see that, but this is how Tech Talks evolved. It was organic, so it's bootstrap. So first you start with what are some of your goals in life, right? For example, I want to build the next Instagram in the Philippines. I will Google it, Instagram, right? When you do that, you will actually find Tech Talks meetup page because meetup.com is an awesome SEO. And a meetup is really an informal meeting. It's really just in Cebu, we have it once or twice a month, and it's after work. We simply have coffee at a coffee shop or meet at somebody's conference room and informally talk about the topic of the day. It could be Ruby on Rails, or it could be how to find funding. So back to a developer wanting to do Instagram. So he Googles Instagram, Davao City. He's based in Davao City. He can easily find a Tech Talks meetup group and says, oh my God, there's a talk next Friday, I'm going to join. He goes there, he hears about these other activities that we do. Tech Talks also does organize startup weekends. We've done 9 startup weekends in the Philippines so far. Who's attended one? You think it's good? Sure, huh? So, when they attend startup weekend, they may have found friends from the previous meetup, so they go with friends, or if they don't have any friends, we force them to have friends. Now, the Startup Weekend workshop ensures that you're able to find partners or friends that will help you build your next startup. So they join Startup Weekend, and then they get so excited, they want to join other events like Geeks on the Beach or Angel Hack Manila. And go back to the previous slide is an actual example of the farm to market highway that Tech Trust has been able to make for a couple of developers from Davao. Is Mark's here? Mark's from Davao? Okay. So Startup Week in Davao, November 2012, the winners were a bunch of awesome developers from Davao City. They got so excited, so they won in November 2012. Davao Startup Weekend. They got so excited, a few months later, they decided to join Angel Hack Manila. Familiar with Angel Hack Manila? They won, right? Some kids from Davao won Angel Hack Manila within a few months. As part of their prize, they got to go to Silicon Valley within 8 months. So we didn't have this opportunity they have had. Am I right? Yes. Awesome. So that's where we are. That's what Tech Talks is. We're a community organization. We don't have any revenues except for Weekston Beach. So if we lose money here, so it's right now I'm so happy with all the events that we'll be doing. I'm so amazed myself that we have 53 speakers here. Even 1 or 2 speakers alone will make me happy. Do you guys like it? You want to do it again? We cannot do this alone. We need your help. We are hiring. We're actually paying people now to work for us. So please come find me. Project managers, marketing, writers, event organizers. Come find me. Thank you so much.
Awesome, thanks Tina. I want to call quickly Mark Deutsch to come down and talk a little bit about creativity and art.
Yeah, I'm actually a local artist. I work out of Cebu City. We've been working with Tina and Dave a lot, like with the team, and we've been doing graphics for Goa also. And this year, Tina wanted to include art from local artists and also like, give them a venue to show their art. So we're starting small this year, and hopefully next year we can have more local artists show their art. One of the things that Goa asked us to do was actually to make a sculpture sort of like showing how technology is affecting human behavior. And I was kind of nervous when we were doing this because I told Tina we were going to build a 10-foot selfie statue. And she was laughing for a few seconds, and I wasn't sure if she was happy or she was mad at me. So the statue's upstairs, and it's made in the lobby. It's made out of scrap wood, and sort of like this pose has become sort of iconic in today's everyday life. And I don't know, some think it's good, some think it's bad. I've had a couple of people actually walk up to me and explain the art to me. So it's a good conversation piece. Another piece, we brought this here because I know a lot of people are Game of Thrones fans, and we made our version of the show. And my mom is actually a toy maker, and we have a lot of scrap toys that are just lying around in the factory. So we made our version sort of like, it's like the throne, but it's made of hundreds and hundreds of toys. So these are like toys from childhood. And like, we put it all together and made a cast of it and put resin over it. Just like a whole piece. We've invited Fred and Maribel Galan to show some work, and you should really check out their paintings. They're pillars of Cebu art. They've been around ever since. There are like a few paintings outside that you should see, and all of them are for sale. And Fred and Maribel are really like contemporary masters of painting. We invited some young artists like Michelle Avalos, who really like a lot. She's very young. She works for the Islands Group, but she does a lot of illustration and painting on the side. So she has some artwork outside. Monica is very talented artist that we invited. She does a lot of paper cut work and also a lot of illustration work. She has some prints and also some paper cut illustrations outside. Peter Carasso is also another toy maker, but he's also a painter and artist. He has small toys that he made just for the event, and it's outside. It's called Siglin, I think. It's based on the Cebu folklore. Yeah, it's also a big Bitcoin fan, so maybe you can buy art. So Bitcoin. Yeah, there are a few more here, like there are a few more pieces outside. So if you wanna check out, some of the artists are outside. Just talk to them, talk to them about art and technology and stuff. And thanks for your time. Thank you.
All right, so feel free to check out the art stuff outside, and feel free to explain to them what it means as well. So I think this is it.
I think so.
I think we're doing lunch. How do you guys sound of that? Okay, so let me explain a little bit on how today's gonna work. Yesterday we had more people eat than registrations than we had. So we're gonna try to stop that today. That hurts if you're a nonprofit. We got charged a lot. So when you exit, you will be given a stub. It's not the same stub as yesterday. It has a name of where you eat. So like this, it says lobby, and then 282. I don't know what number is for, but it says lobby. So once you get a stub, give it to the attendant at the restaurant, and then you can come in. All right?
If you don't have a stub,
then go to the registration booth. If you make it outside without getting a stub, which I don't know, you should really pay attention.
That's an achievement.
Yeah, you can go to the registration booth and ask for a stub. But if I see any of you get a stub here and go there,
Then if you see attendees upstairs and they're like, how do I eat? I don't have a stub. This is so confusing.
then yeah, get the registration. Please help us out. Thank you very much.
All right.
Enjoy your lunch, guys. We'll be back here at 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock, right?
Do you know what time
What
we're
is that?
resuming?
2 o'clock. Please be here before 2 o'clock. And this is breakout sessions at 2 o'clock. Thank you very much, guys.
So reminder, breakouts, 3 of the rooms are here. This is Monte Carlo 1, 2, and 3. When you come back, this will be 3 separate rooms. The other breakout is in the other building across the parking.
All right, let's get some music. Thank you.